Almost.
Centerville City Council meeting for December 18th. Oh, we're waiting for our YouTube light.
Okay.
Now it's gone. Centerville City Council meeting for December 18th, 2018 is now in session. Thank you everyone for being here. We previously held a work session where we discussed our annual audited financial statements for the city. Our city year end is June 30th. And so we are getting a report on those as well as our monthly financials. So we are happy to have everyone here tonight with us that are in the audience or participating and watching it on YouTube. And we'll start the session this evening with a prayer or thought from Councilwoman Fillmore.
How about both?
That would be wonderful.
I like to take the opportunity to share a thought, and tonight's will be very short. It's a quote from Warren Buffett. Someone sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. Our most gracious Father in heaven, we're so thankful to live in this blessed place with so many good people, so many caring neighbors, such a strong, healthy, vibrant city organization, such a strong financial situation. Please bless and watch over those in our community who are not feeling strong, who are having trials and need the help and lifting of Thee and of those around them. Please help us all to know how we can reach out and help those around us. We're thankful for this opportunity to do the city's business, to live in a free nation and a democracy and somewhere where we can be involved and have our voice heard. We're thankful for the work that all of these people here tonight do. We're thankful for the citizens who are here and their involvement. Please bless us with Thy spirit of wisdom and fairness and good intent tonight. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you for that heartfelt prayer, Councilwoman Fillmore. So I usually look around to see if they're scouts. I've tried to recently get them to lead our Pledge of Allegiance. But since we have no scouts tonight, if you would all stand with me and I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is the open session. This is a session where anyone is allowed to come to either of these two microphones and take up to a couple of minutes discussing anything that may be on their mind. Now, keep in mind that we do have on the agenda later a public hearing where we will discussing the subdivision plat amendment on the Woods Park subdivision. So this would be... And a second one as well, I think, don't we?
Yeah.
Excuse me, I missed one.
Two public hearings there.
Uh-huh. And yeah, there's another one. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my old agenda. So the other one is the Sheffield Downs subdivision public hearing as well too. So those items you will have a chance to, if you're here for those, to address those later. So that would be other items besides those two items that we have on a public hearing. If you would, anyone that would like to come up, I now open it to the public for the open session. If none, then we will move on. I'll close that open session and we'll move to the minutes of our December 4, 2018 City Council meeting for council to comment on or a motion to accept those minutes. Any discussion?
I'll make a
Motion to accept the minutes from the December 4 City Council meeting.
You got it.
Second.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motions are approved from the December 4th council meeting. Next on our agenda, it is the public hearing, subdivision plat amendment on the Woods Park subdivision, and we will be having Corey Snyder address that from our staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, as indicated on your agenda, the Woods Park subdivision, the developer slash builder and the homeowners association has requested amending some notes on their plat. And so you'll be reviewing that tonight. Just the standards are set by state statute. One is there a good cause for the amendment, and second, is anybody materially injured by the changes that are being made. If I recall correctly, the notes in this case, you do not find any of the layout of the subdivision changing. They would like to change some notes. I think it's 11 and 13 on the plat. If you may recall in history, this project was involved in a overlay rezone, changing it from agricultural to residential low. And part of the development design parameters were set by this PDO rezone, or Plan Development Overlay rezone. They did receive a density bonus for the project in exchange for allowing some design parameters to be set for the project. Think about traditional, what we call cookie cutter subdivision. They just have to plat the lots. Then the house that's built is determined by the individual owner. And we do have some standard bulk area requirements known as setbacks and height requirements. In a plan development, we extend further as part of that density bonus. We talk about design parameters. They did set a lot of those design parameters in these notes as indicated on the plat. They were also involved in assisting the city for putting in a storm drain line under the UTA and railroad corridor to upsize the pipeline. We split the cost of $300,000, I believe. We split it $150,000 apiece as part of solving the drainage problems in this area. So that was another reason for the bonus. For the notes specific, I believe in their petition, note 11 is to be eliminated. Staff is not recommending that elimination. 11, I believe, is the fencing requirement. We have some standard fencing allowances and restrictions under the city code. This subdivision stepped a little more restrictive than the city code at the time. The fencing currently under the note generally says you can fence your rear yard only, but between the houses and in front of the houses, you cannot use fencing. Part of that was with the density bonus, to allow some space because the setbacks were tighter between buildings, and so the fencing was just allowed into the rear yard area. So note 11 restricted that. If you drive through the subdivision today, you'll see lots of fences in the side yards. And so that's one of the homeowners and builders' request, is to change that fencing and to eliminate that note. From my perspective, in a design, when you look at the regulation of fencing under 6 feet, there's no permits required by the city. So although there's a restriction for fencing, it's usually not caught till after the fact, because there's no permits for fencing that's less than 7 feet. Our code says 6, but the building code says 7 feet. And so you see a number of owners on their own accord, as they built their homes, wanted and desired the fencing and put up the fencing. Also part of Oakwood Homes contract did, I believe, install a few fences under the contract as they sold a home to a client. So you see fencing. They'd just like to eliminate that and return it to city code. That's what would happen by default. The problem that staff sees with that is we, on the corner lots, restrict fencing now. In the old days, on your corner, if you're on a corner lot on the side of your house, you could put your fence all the way out to the sidewalk. and then nobody takes care of it, and people against the sidewalk, the weeds if they only put it a foot off. The city in 2003 changed that. We have a very aggressive setback to the 6-foot fence on corner lots. So if we eliminated the note and went back to the city standard, the 4 or 5 corner lots in the subdivision still violate city ordinance. And so we couldn't recommend that note 11 be holistically eliminated. So we're trying to write some language that captures, okay, we'll allow additional fencing in the side yard, including the corner lots, under these parameters. And so we've recommended a change to the applicant's request for fencing. The note 13 is rather long. You have to get the magnifying glass out for the plat to see it. Note 13 is complicated in this fashion. Because you had closer homes, there was a desire in the design to keep yard spaces as much as possible. And so we talked about what's often happened is people like to fill the yard spaces with their approach, their driveway, their RV parking, their basketball court, whatever else, and you can create too much concrete. And our ordinances try to keep some green space to every lot. And so that was the discussion in the design, is how can we ensure in a tighter development that we have sufficient green space. What was chosen is the driveway widths and approaches for a 2-car garage were set at a standard. There were a few lots that could accommodate a 3-car garage, and so the 3-car garage width was established. The concept, though, is the 3-car garage was to have a tapered driveway to the 2-car garage width. What happened in, I think, 4 of the homes, I think there's only 4 that have 3-car garage in the Woods Park, they poured the driveway straight without the taper. And the contractor, during the discussions well over a year ago, just didn't realize that that was a restriction note on the plat. So they poured the concrete, closed on a few homes, and now we have this disparity where Oakwood wanted to go in and fix some, but they can't walk onto somebody's property and change their driveway after it's sold. So they've agreed together as association and builder to come in and amend that note so that the 3-car garage can just stay straight. If you look at the note, it says tapered, but it doesn't define what the taper is. Is the taper just a 2-foot taper, a 4-foot taper, a 15-foot taper? And that's where the language was a little too soft in the notes. Our public works director, our city engineer looked at the homes that created this situation. The biggest concern that they would have was where the meters were placed in relation to the driveway, the water meters, because we have a space requirement. You can't put your water meter right in your driveway or next to your driveway, because if somebody is bending down and reading the meter or fixing the meter, it could be run over. So our insurance has encouraged us to adopt an ordinance to create the buffer spacing for safety. They've gone out and checked that. I don't recall, because it's been like almost 2 years now. I think they did move a meter in one of the 3-car garages. I don't quote it for sure. But they came back and said, okay, our meters are okay. So they've been supportive of allowing the 3-car garage to go straight, or 3-car driveway to be straight with the 4 lots. And the change of note 13 is attempting to do that same thing, to move it. So this is a request of the Homeowners Association and the builder. We're looking at it. We think there's reasonable cause, and so that could be talked about as good cause. We don't see with the 3-car versus 2-car driveway, you're not gaining that much on a taper concrete. You're not gaining that much yard space. You're gaining a little, you get a little bit, but not enough. And with the soft language of the note, it is a little bit confusing on how much taper that would be. So rather than argue about how much taper should be there, if they're already poured, they have a desire for it, that seems reasonable in our mind, and there's not a material loss we feel that anybody's impacted, particularly since these are design parameters for that particular development that are above and beyond normal city code. And if the residents desire some of those changes and it doesn't substantially affect the development, then we think it meets the material standard argument. So we recommend that you support the petition change but with modifying 11 to the language we've recommended.
Is that language in the staff report then? You want us to put that up there?
Should be. Should be in the, I don't know if we've prepared an ordinance for the amendment. It's not an ordinance, is it?
It's just a recommended motion.
Yeah, our recommended motion to you.
Do we have further questions for our Community Development Director, for Corey, from the council? Like I said, this is a motion, this is a public hearing. Before I open the public hearing, though, I need it to be noted, I believe I missed doing a roll call to start this meeting. So all 5 council members here are present. Are we okay with the vote we took on the minutes? Okay, we don't need to revote. Okay. So please note that, Katie, in the minutes that all 5 of our council members are present. Let's go to then a public hearing on this matter.
Is the applicant present?
Yeah, excuse me, thank you. Is the applicant here on this? The applicant, would you like to do your presentation? State your name for us, please, and who you're with.
Steve Johns, the Vice President of Construction for Oakwood Homes. Although much of this has been inherited, Oakwood Homes does recognize that we were deficient in our adherence to some of the plat notes. There's no excuse to that. There was a lot of turnover and some company acquisition items that played a role in that, but being a reputable company, we are prepared to make whatever corrections are necessary either direction. We do feel that the amendments that are being requested will benefit not only the community, but they don't draw back on the appearance of the community or the function that was intended for the community. So we have been working on this for quite some time, I think a couple of years now, and I think that it's something that we're all eager to come to a resolution on. In going back to Plat Note 11, I haven't read the staff report, so I'd like to understand a little bit more the fencing. So Corey, if you would help me understand that fencing shall be allowed for all rear and side yard areas. Does that mean that we would be able to enclose where we're currently at? Which I think with that amendment, we would still maintain compliance. My concern with restricting fencing altogether and going back to the rear of the house, it's a little bit unorthodox, and even though we were, we were aware of it, or we had been made aware and had every ability to adhere to that, I still think it would lend to some disadvantages to the final occupants or the homeowners in the community, because having the fence clear at the back of the house limits that usable space. And so I have no objection to the way it's written here. I do have concern that if we nix the ability to amend the plat altogether on this, it could potentially be difficult again to, although Oakwood would be willing to correct all of the fencing that was done incorrectly by Oakwood Homes, I think we would see a lot of resistance from the community on being able to enter their property and make those corrections. And so my fear there would be that it would prolong where we're at. So at which point we'd probably be back here anyways talking about how we engage the community that's not allowing us onto their property to get into compliance. So, but either way, we'll stand at the ready to make whatever remedies we need to. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask any questions or feedback right now. Any questions that need to be asked on that? Plat Note 11. Plat Note 13.
It is appropriate, by the way.
Okay, thank you. On Plat Note 13, as Corey mentioned, again, this was an opportunity that we had to do it right the first time, and we failed to adhere to that plat note. So we completely acknowledge when this community was being planned, There was not the intention of having third-car garages altogether. Some of our product offered or lent to having the ability to put a third-car garage on there, and which is a benefit to the community for that extra accessory. I guess we just got into the mode of production, and when we have a third-car garage, we straighten out the driveways as much as possible to be able to accommodate that. We are in violation, and we've meticulously gone through and established the specific lots that would benefit from having a standard third-car garage and third-car garage wide driveway, without, like Corey said, limiting the landscaping excessively. So that's the cause for the petition. I think if we're able to make these, we will be in compliance with the requirements, and we will have minimal disruption on the homeowners. So,
Can you tell me how many lots you have with third-car garages?
5 lots. Several of those lots are already on a cul-de-sac or a knuckle lot, and so they already are in compliance. And so there's really one there are 4 that require that are currently poured out of compliance with the wider driveways, and then 1 that Oakwood has committed to the home buyer that if we are able to make this plat amendment would incur the cost of retroing that driveway, adjusting the water meters and utilities, as Corey pointed out, to make sure they're outside of the zone of infraction for any utilities.
Any further questions for the applicant?
Do you have and maybe that's what people are here for, do you have homeowners who are objecting to the things we're talking about?
To my knowledge, we do not, though I think that'd probably be better to ask.
I don't know.
When
we finish with the applicant, you get an
We'll
opportunity.
do a public hearing, yeah.
Again, I think that Lisa and Corey are both very sick of us because we have gone back and forth so much on this in trying to find the balance between all parties. And I think this is what we've come to as that balance. And so I believe, I can't speak for the homeowners in whole, but I know there's some outside frustrations that they've had with Oakwood, but I think when it comes to these specific topics, this is the balance, so.
I do know that there has been some real problem with the snow removal up in that area.
You mean at the city,
Uh-huh.
or because they're?
Yeah, because they don't have anywhere to put the snow, because they did add the extra parts to the driveway.
I can speak to that a little bit. Randy Randall, our Public Works Director, did raise that concern as we were negotiating the amendments for these plat notes, because obviously if you have wider driveways, you have less curb area for utilities and snow and things like that. But we did add a clause at the very end of these plat notes. So first of all, the plat notes, I think, as Mr. Johns has recognized, only address status quo. So we're actually not letting, it's just the as-built environment, trying to make sure that those that were built with driveways that were wider than permitted are now allowed. But there are a few 3-car garages that actually comply. So we're just trying to bring a few into compliance. I guess 4 out of compliance, and then 1 would be able to expand a little bit. But so we did add a sentence on the snow removal that the proximity of the driveways and limited curb area within the project creates limited snow storage and removal issues within the project. The city will provide standard snow removal for the public streets within the project, but shall not be responsible to provide any additional snow removal services or to manipulate the snow in any way other than plowing. So the point was, you know, it's a circle, so we're going to come in with a pass and go out, but there is very limited area for storage, so it is difficult to plow, but it's basically an existing condition. But we now have a plat note that says snow removal is difficult and we won't manipulate it. We will just plow it.
I knew Public Works that wasn't their favorite place, so.
We've had a light winter so far.
Yeah.
Down here we have, and the mountain's been pretty good. Any further questions before I open the public hearing? You will have a chance to comment, both you and our staff, after the public hearing.
Okay.
As well, Mr. Johns. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, I will open this matter to a public hearing. Anyone from the audience may come up here and make comments on it. And so the public hearing is now open. Please state your name and where you're from when you come up for our
My
record.
name's Joey Wilson. I am a resident. I actually have one of the tapered driveways. We're in the model home that was originally built, so I think it may not have this issue. I don't believe that we have an issue with the tapering, but first of all, speaking for myself, I don't have any issues with the amendments here regarding the fence or the driveways. And if my comment needs to be addressed at a different time in a different place, I'm okay with that answer. There is a problem with the common area with the drainage of the water from the common area. And so it is a 365-day swamp. A little girl was running through there, hit the water area, and broke her front 2 teeth out. So we've had some kids, it's supposed to be a kids area. There's a playground down there, but a whole side of it is constantly underwater. In the wintertime, obviously that ices up. I personally, in the summertime, slipped on it because the sidewalk has become basically permanently mossy. So my understanding is that Oakwood did some superficial corrections to the problem, but it hasn't fully been addressed. And I just want to make sure that we are aware of that as a city that the city council and the mayor is aware of that issue, and hopefully that we can get that drainage issue. I think it's not a superficial fix. It's going to take a bit of digging in, literally, to get that solved. But for the kids in the neighborhood, that has become a totally unusable space. There's a lot of bugs that come from it. It's an eyesore. I mean, everything about it has degraded that area. So we would love to hear how that is going to be addressed. And once again, I'm not sure it fits exactly this conversation, but I wanted to bring it up so that if it does, we can discuss it.
Thank you, Joey.
My name's Dee Evans. I own the 1 acre east of this subdivision, PUD, POD, whatever it is now. The problem you have is there's no place for snow removal. As I understand, the approaches are supposed to be 26 feet wide, and they're 35 and 36 feet wide. Corey, I guess it's Corey, what is it, Corey or Cornelius? He goes by Corey here, but he actually signs paperwork as Cornelius. Corey? I don't know if you guys knew that. I didn't know who he was on paper until we come to these meetings, but as what he addressed, I own the acre east of it. Well, I get flooded by this subdivision all the time. My property is underwater, half my cow pasture, because they've run the roof drainage, and they have a sub-drain that goes completely around this subdivision, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the drains are 3 and 4 inches above the grass. That makes it really hard to drain to. They run the bubblers off of the roof 18 inches away from the fence at my property. So this last summer, I've been working with Dave Walker with the city, and I have a recording that I've played for this city council meeting twice. If you'd like me to play it again, I can play it again tonight. It was the 24th of May, 2015, where Oakwoods has come up with a solution to the problem. Well, this year, Dave Walker called me up, and he says that they've got the solution. I said, okay, what's the solution? He said they're going to dig a trench out and put a drain at the low spot of my cow pasture. I said, no, you're not. You're not putting any more heavy machinery on my property. I let them bring curb, gutter, and sidewalk and asphalt at the request of Randy Randall and the mayor at the time, so that any future development wouldn't have to go 20 feet into the lot and bring it to curb and gutter. Well, now, all the snow gets pushed against the gate, bends the stupid gate, and I've had to take and put the gate up on, was it a 6x6 vinyl fence post? It's about 2 feet long that they put the fence on. Well, every time the wind blows off the thing, and it goes boing and hits the ground because it's made out of tubular, and it's got 4 lag bolts into the cement at the curb. Well, the first time I got this dotty cow I have, she got out, she just walked right between the pole and the vinyl fence because there's nothing there. Kids can walk in and out. The one homeowner, I guess he sold on the one corner, he's one of them I think is in violation. Put a wedged a tie between the end of the bolts and the vinyl fence. He also uses the vinyl fence, 10 or 12 inches of it, as a retention wall because his grass is that higher because he's got a sunken trampoline. But in my opinion, until these things are taken care of, which we were promised, guaranteed, we wouldn't be flooded out. And I've been being flooded out, I'm flooded out to this day, I'm flooded out. Last summer, I went to the expense and bought some clay soil. And I built a moat 5 feet away from the fence because the one house on the end, I don't know their names, I rang their doorbell, I've been over there 3 different times. They won't answer the door for me, but when I call Centerville Police and they come, they answer the door for the police officer. And they actually tied their roof drain into the sub-drain where it should have been, instead of blowing it onto my pasture. And I've submitted hard copies every meeting, every other year that you guys have. I even hired an attorney to sue you guys. And it got squashed because they claim that my law firm signed a non-disclosure against small towns and cities, and Centerville was one of them. But that's still, to this day, an ongoing deal. Because to this day, I'm still being flooded. And I'd like to know what they're gonna do about it. And the gate they have between agricultural, and like he says, these kids playing. I like kids. But I don't want the liability, and I've sat in this meeting, and you guys have the liability, and Oakwood has the liability of my longhorn steer. My granddaughter, we measured her horn width. It's 5'6". You have a cow that when she swings her head, and it fits right between the gate just fine because they haven't put the proper gates in there. It should be a non-climb gate that separates low density from agricultural. But this has all been swept under the rug, and now we're worried about curb and gutter. This surface drain's not working, as you heard from the previous gentleman. It's not working. They did it wrong. And for them to say that they inherited this, they knew exactly what they were getting when they took it over. And I'd like to know what they're gonna do about it. What are they gonna do to quit flooding me out? Because this last summer, from what I understand, this last summer was the first summer the homeowners control their own water, if I'm not mistaken. Well, we've tried to get them to cut back the watering, and so it's not flooding me, but it still floods me. Every other day, I got 8 to 10 inches of water in my moat I built, and it still overflows. The one gal in the greenhouse, Jessie, I don't know her last name, but she asked me if I would take and branch off the moat, and I said I can't, because your bubbler is right there, 18 inches away from my property, and there comes the water underneath the fence. Their sprinkler spray hit the vinyl fence, run down onto my property. So they need to fix that. What entails to fix it? I don't know, but I'd sure like my property back. I haven't been able, I've got crap for grass for my cows because it's flooded. I can't even put a tractor on it. About 3 months out of the year, I can put a tractor out there. And I'm highly irritated about it. Now we got Ivory Homes building in Farmington, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but they're planning on putting an 18-inch their curb and gutter sidewalk going into whatever the creek is along Lund Lane on the Centerville side that feeds into what Oakwood had to help bore underneath the freeway. But I don't want my driveway being flooded because we've got it coming from Rennie Homes on Farmington into that ditch. Now we're gonna have 21 homes and that whole piece where the old, used to be white barn. You can see it real good right now because all the trees are gone. But they're planning on running that into there. So is that gonna, are they gonna bring the enclosed ditch all the way up to that part where it comes in? Or are they gonna flood us over again? So these flooding issues are serious. And curb and gutter and with the driveway, that is a serious issue that needs to be remedied. And I'd appreciate it if you guys would listen to us homeowners. We're tired of it. You don't know how tired of it I am. So, if you have any questions, you can get a hold of me. My address there is 551 West, Lund Lane. I live in the house across the street, 44 West, Lund Lane. So, that's the difference in the dividing line. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. Do we have further public comments on the public hearing?
Hi, I'm Chelsea Stewart. I'm actually Lot 13 that's part of the amendment for, what is that, Section 13? My house is the only one that actually falls within the provisions and needs to be augmented. I have a 3-car garage and a 2¼ driveway. So it's really hard to try and get cars in and out of the driveway if we are doing anything with it. I understand the concern about the snow removal, and having watched the snowplow driver actually make it through our neighborhood twice last Wednesday, I can tell you that there is, I understand the space concern. That being said, what was it, 2 years ago when we had tons of snow? Yes, it was pushed at the end of the street. However, none of the changes on this would actually affect anywhere where the snow goes. And the snowplow drivers literally hit the middle of the road. So in fact, we usually have like a 4-foot, because I'm at the end of the area, we actually have like a 4-foot snow drift that we have to like drive up and down and try and get up into my driveway that's on a hill. I will agree with one statement of Dee's that, yeah, can we just finish, please? I'm pretty sure every neighbor here agrees that the fencing and the driveways, it'd be really nice if we could just approve it. It'd be great. It would help neighborhood and city morale. Because we can sit here and go, yeah, we really like where we live, and it's nice that we're supported in that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
My name is Trish Evans. I'm Dee Evans' wife. We live across the street and own property to the east of this subdivision. When they put this subdivision in, the original agreement was when they took our fencing down, that when they brought the curb and guttering and the asphalt to our property line, that there would be a no-climb fence installed there, or gate installed there. And the gate that they have is a pole, a little crappy green pole that I watch kids go up over the top of that gate and down into the pasture with that cow all the time. And they've never lived up to the agreement that that would be a non-climb gate. but yet they took down our non-climb fence on that property line to put in their fencing. And I think that needs to be remedied, and I think the drainage needs to be remedied. It has cost us a lot of money to not have any pasture grass for our animals to graze on. And the fact that nobody does anything to remedy this problem is a joke. And when you have a neighbor on the corner that waters for 3 and 4 hours at a time when there's restrictions and nobody else is watering during the middle of the day, and they water for 3 and 4 hours, we get flooded, and we are the ones paying the price. This needs to be remedied. And the business of pushing the snow up against our gates so that all of the snow melts and drains onto our property, that is not okay. And the city should not be doing that. They need to figure out a method to remove the snow from that area and keep it off of our property and away from that gate, because that is our property and we were there before this subdivision was ever there. And I would appreciate it if that was addressed.
Thank you, Tricia. Further comments from the public? If not, I will close the public hearing, and we will open it to first the staff response to some of the public's comments.
First, just to put to rest my name, it is Taylor Spenlove. No, it's Taylor out in the audience. My nickname is Corey. My legal name is Corvin. So you will always get a signature with an official letter with Corvin on it. However, I'm not the city engineer. I am not the public works director. So some of the questions that are mentioned or the issues tonight are best addressed by them. Again, I think the drainage issues are separate. Not that they don't have some validity, but they're separate from the petition. So you can decide what you want to parse out in your decision-making process. The drainage is 2 parts, just for my recollection and understanding. The playground area inside the development is part of their drainage. It is intended to carry some backflow from, even though there's a large detention basin out onto the frontage road, that's a regional system. Their portion in an overflow goes into the detention near the playground. So it is specifically designed to have the water. The original developer thought he would turn that into a play area to function with the water coming and going. Sounds like the water doesn't come and go as much. So I think a discussion with our city engineer, if the homeowners association and the developer want to change the approved detention design for the project, they certainly can go through that process and have a discussion on what it would take. But just right up front, that playground area is a portion of their detention. That's why water arrives in that playground. So it was intentional. It sounds like, although it's more frequent than maybe desired. So I think that's a separate issue for the homeowners and the developer to discuss. If they want to remedy that, take away it as a play area and leave it as open space because of any liability issues, those are certainly other discussions that can take place. But I do think it would be a significant design change for the detention to not function anymore. To the issues of the neighboring property, it's been an ongoing conflict for a long time. City engineer, public works director, Dave Walker, the drainage and utility have been out there several times and had some discussions. I know they take a different position than Mr. Evans takes on some of the claims about the drainage because they've looked at the topography and where the water's coming from, and it is not all coming from the Woods Park subdivision. So that's something that you can take on and have them answer later on that drainage, because they're the experts on that. But I think there's a other side of the story on where the water's coming for Mr. Evans' property. And so you can query that. But other than that, I don't hear any questions relating to the issues at hand. So that's the best I can answer it for you.
I do have one question for Lisa, and this is relative to the carry through. So we've failed to follow the notes. We've sold on the property. How is the homeowner released from that liability of a failed plat note? Because I'm hearing it, oh, it's somebody else owns it. I'm not seeing how the liability disappears for allowing either the homeowner or the developer, if we ask them to cure it back to to the conditions of the plat note that they'd have to.
So are you talking about the driveway widths?
Right.
So, I mean, we originally talked with the developer and the homeowners and said, okay, cut the driveway back and put in a curb. And that's kind of when we started the conversation of, you know, that's not realistic, and they have the 3-car garage, but I'm not sure I understand your question about liability.
What I'm trying to understand is that what I'm hearing is it's already done, therefore we should retroactively agree to it and make these additional adjustments. I guess I'm missing the context of what the developer is saying. We understand, we own this issue, there was not compliance. I guess I'm having a disconnect.
Well, the disconnect, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, is currently there are letters in the home and the files of 4 homes on the driveway. Those letters in their report and is given to their homeowners association that they are currently in violation of their plat notes. So that's the status of the enforcement that has taken place so far. The homeowners association attorney is the official contact, received that letter, that the 4 homes are in violation of the driveway, and that that letter is also in the 4 files of those 3-car garages for in the future. The position staff has taken to point at this point, because they were negotiating, coming and deciding whether they wanted to make application. We've not initiated any further enforcement after that. The position that we've taken is that we operate on a complaint basis. We've not received a complaint. We just have the knowledge that there's a problem here. So we've placed it in the file. We have a choice of putting a non-compliant certificate on the property, and then that clouds the title associated with the property from the city's perspective. We can take it through the civil penalty process and fine people, or we can take it through the criminal process and give a Class C misdemeanor. All 3 of those can happen to the developer or the homeowner. That's the risk at hand right now. If nothing happens and something comes out and somebody wants to make a change for a permit later to one of those 4 properties, that letter's flagged, so they have to fix that problem. If you just ignored it, for lack of better terms, they'd have to fix that problem before another permit would be issued. So it can come back and get them later if we just don't do the other 3 types of enforcement. There's still a catch to them. So it doesn't alleviate anybody from the responsibility. The developer can be cited for the violation, and the homeowner can be cited for the violation. The struggle with the developer is unless they have permission to enter a property and make a concrete cut, their hands are tied. They're willing to, but their hands are tied. What I understand in the discussions, and this is third party on my part, is some of the homeowners want to keep the width and don't want it cut. And so they've come to this talk of, well, let's see if we can do a plat amendment to get where we all want to land. If not, then we'll step back and start to talking about other enforcements.
And just to follow up, in my opinion, once the homeowner purchases the land and the lot, they have purchased the violation. So their remedy and recourse might be to the developer who, you know, didn't build it according to the plans, but they're both involved at that point. And candidly, we probably have to go after the homeowner first, because they're the ones that own the property that can actually make the fix. Now, I will say Oakwood Homes has been involved. They've acknowledged their error, and they're trying to fix it. So I think I want to give them some credit for staying involved in this and not just walking away. So we're trying to solve the problem as well.
Thanks. That does give the clarity I was looking for.
Do you have more questions for Court,
Yeah.
for staff?
So how much on a percentage, so there's 4 lots that are in violation on their driveway width.
Correct.
How much of a percentage excess hard space that won't drain would you guess there is? Is there a 10% increase, a 25% increase, a 50% increase?
I haven't
Because that's part of the issue.
Yeah, I haven't calculated it, and that's where you go to the soft language of the original. It says to taper. Somebody could argue that I could just take it from the curb or from the approach cut and just take a 2-foot corner off, and I've tapered it. And that would be very minimal change.
Okay.
Or the argument could be is you need to go all the way up to your third car garage with a taper. And the reality of it is somebody needs to be able to back out of their third car garage X distance before they hit the taper to get out to, and so that's going to be somewhere around 15 feet. When you're dealing with 20-foot setback, you're probably looking at a 5-foot taper, not much taper. Tapering versus straight. If we had deeper setbacks, the taper would function better.
So most of the drainage issue, so there's not going to be much impact on the drainage issue?
No, in fact, if you, the driveway, the officially, that water would end up into the city's storm drain system from the driveway. It's what you're hearing talked about is the backyard area for the adjoining neighbor to the east. That's their backyard and their sprinklers and any, you know, the hills, the houses have been filled around, so there's a slope off of the homes, and the watering of that was supposed to hit the land drain, and there are some grade problems with hitting the land drain, from what I understand.
Okay.
But the amount of water that's coming from the development versus the natural water that falls on the neighbor's property, I think there's a big disparity on the amount of water that's caused by the development.
I have a question, Lisa. So they're asking for a fencing amendment. Can we put a condition on that stating that they put up a gate that is non-climbable, where that was something in the fencing they were supposed to do?
Yeah,
it's different fencing.
Yeah, that fence crosses the public right of way, so Randy has to approve that fence design. We'd have to go back. I don't recall that a non-climb fence was promised. May have been, I don't recall that. But Randy approved that gate in its installation because it crosses our public right of way. So we'd have to go back to what Randy would approve to be on the public right of way.
Public right of way down the side of the property line?
No, there's a dead end. There's a dead end that you're talking about where this gate exists. So it's a circle. So you enter off of Lund Lane and you have this loop, but you have a spur on the southeastern side is a spur, one lot. It's a one lot spur, and that's where the gate. It's a farm gate, for lack of better terms. It's a green farm rail type gate that the neighbor's complaining about. Randy did, from what I understand, approve that because that crosses. That's a equipment inside of our public right of way. And Randy had to approve that gate.
But I do like the idea of following this recommendation and approving the plat amendment. I know it doesn't solve all of the problems, but it solves a chunk of the problems.
I'm just trying to say the gate is a separate issue than the fencing.
But I'm wondering, I think this is Robin's question, and maybe we would like Lisa's opinion, is it's a separate issue, but can we approve this based on the condition that that issue gets addressed? So then the plat amendment doesn't get signed until that process has been through with the goal and intent of changing it to a non-climbing fence unless there's a legitimate reason why that can't be so.
Yeah, my hesitancy with that is I think you need more information. I think you can certainly direct staff to research the allegations tonight and have staff that's equipped with the information that you need, because Corey and I are not the two staff members that can adequately respond to those issues, the drainage and the fencing and what options we have. So I would be hesitant to put a condition on what you have before you tonight because of some other complaints that were brought up.
Well, other than maybe needing to hear from applicant, I'd be ready to make a motion, so.
Well, before we make that motion, I was going to actually head where Lisa was heading, and Steve, if we can get a staff direction to, because this is not the first time that we've heard about the drainage issues related to this development and to the adjoining properties. And my recollection was last time that there was solutions underway and that this situation would be taken care of. So I would like to direct staff to have a report from Public Works directors and anyone else on staff who may be involved in any capacity, so we can get this as a one and done. Because I would like to see all the property owners in the area feel that it's satisfied, because I understand the tension. I have a neighbor who waters excessively and my land's lower. So I end up with a lot of flooding and it's very frustrating, but I can't change that. But I would like to know what the actual details are so that we can at least get this solved, so that the expectations for the developer, the homeowners, and the adjoining property owners are well understood.
And I would say to the Evans family as well too, to me being fairly new, I wasn't the mayor here when that happened, that I have to have two sides to every story. So just like Councilman McEwen saying, yeah, I would like to get a report from our Public Works Director and from Dave Walker and others so we can have the facts to determine what's taking place as well too. So.
Right. And Steve, if there are any recommendations that can come with that meeting, I would prefer that it's both a report and recommendation so that we have a concrete path.
And so is your thought to table this and leave it kind of dangling?
No, I think this is a separate issue, but since we had appropriate input from the public, I'd like to make sure that we get that shortly.
Before we take a motion, though, the applicant does have the right to respond to public comment or the petitioner if you would like to, Mr. Johns. Unless you don't have any more, then.
No, I mean, I'll probably speak to the concerns that were brought up. It doesn't sound like there were any concerns relating to the plat amendment, but certainly some questions and concerns about the drainage, which we have spoken about frequently. I've handed out my card to several people. I am frequently in touch with Aaron. I don't know if he's still the president of the HOA for the development. But we stand at the ready we don't want to be the cause of any problems. Now, there is a difference between what is a legitimate problem and sometimes expectations that aren't being, properly set and results that aren't exactly the way they were envisioned to be at the time of purchase. And we're always driving our company to make sure we're setting the right expectations. There were several expectations within this community. For example, the fact that the playground would be in a active detention pond. But we have tried to design that. It is a high maintenance assembly down there, but it is acting as designed. But nonetheless, I am available, and we have a very robust warranty program to anybody who has concerns about the drainage for us to review those and make sure that we have built to the construction documents. And if there is any deficiency or construction defect on those, we'll again stand at the ready to take care of those and take action on those. As we see it currently, and with all the reviews that have been done internally as well, we feel that the community has been built and the drainage is effective to the construction drawings. So that's all.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one question? Because that's a great statement. Would you be willing to work with our Public Works Director and ensure that they are in agreement with you on that statement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. So if there's no further question, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move that we approve the subdivision plat amendment for the Woods Park subdivision located at Lund Lane and Frontage Road, subject to the conditions and based on the findings set forth in the staff report.
Second.
I have a motion to second. Any further discussion or debate?
So can I just clarify? So the staff report, is this accurate, that you're recommending to leave in note 11 and amend note 13 as requested? So is that your motion right out of the staff report to leave?
11 has changed.
Number 11 is a modification, isn't it?
We can't just wipe it out because
Right.
of the side
Okay,
yard was the issue.
modified as noted in the staff
So it was
report.
modified rather than just removed.
Right,
That
okay.
was my understanding.
Okay.
I'm still struggling a little bit. I mean, if we're going to let them, I mean, obviously taking down their fences and everything would be way more expensive than a gate. So,
I really agree with you, but I also agree that they are separate issues that we need more information. And I think that it's clear to staff that we want a full report so that we can have some say and follow up and make sure this is moving forward.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, if it was a condition that we're just realizing now, I don't think it's fair or even legal to impose that condition now. I mean, what I'm saying is, yeah, we can go look and see if a non-climbable fence was required, but I'm with Corey. I don't remember that language, but let's go find out if it was required. But if you want to require it just because they're asking for a plat amendment, I don't think that's legally appropriate.
okay.
But it was a good question.
I don't think it's going away, Robin. It'll come back.
It was a
pretty
good
quick.
idea, so yeah. keep it on the
But
forefront.
if it
right?
is a
maybe if
fence
we-
that's in the public right of
maybe
way, it
if we-
sounds like we have control over what that might be.
Yeah.
I'm lost. The fence they're talking about is not the fence that this proposal affects.
Correct.
No, I was
At
just
all.
hoping that if we were willing to give them that, maybe they'd be willing to keep the neighborhood happy and put up just a gate. Just be a good neighbor and put up a gate.
So I guess I'm left, as we're moving towards a vote, with two questions. Number one, I'm a little surprised that the HOA president is not here. I would think that he would be here for this action. And number two, I see a number of people. Looks to me like there's 29 lots. There's a lot fewer than 29 people, and two of the people don't live there and have a different issue. I'd really like to know how many people in the HOA are favorable and feel that they are not harmed by the action that's being taken.
We can answer
Mayor,
that.
could I address that?
You may.
If you look at your plat, it has multiple sheets to it. It takes everyone to sign it for it to be recorded.
Okay.
So you can choose to ask, or you can say contingent upon everybody signs the plat.
Well, and we've been working on this for quite some time, and that was one comment that we had was, you know, we even had a neighborhood meeting down at Public Works, and it was a
Yeah.
full house in that small room. And we did say, you need to, you know, get the temperature first before we bring this to the council, because we need to know that as a homeowners association, you want to do this. And so, in my opinion, they've done that. But yes, as Corey said, the stopgap is every owner in there has to sign the plat. So
that
they all
means
have to agree.
So that means if one person says no, the fact that we've approved it, it doesn't change.
Right, unless they amend their CCNRs and change the voting, but, you know, there's some other ways. But right now, it's set up to just have everybody sign the plat. There were a lot of other issues, and it was reduced down to these two, because that was what a majority could agree on, or unanimous.
Okay, we ready for a vote?
Before we vote, if we could just make sure that the city will provide standard show removal can be changed to snow removal.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a couple possessives, and I've sent an email
Symbol.
on that, so.
Okay, thanks. George did.
I did.
Councilman McEwen. All right, let's start with a vote, starting with Councilman Ince.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. We thank for all the input and public comment. Hopefully, Dee and Tricia and Chelsea and Joey, that we can get some further answers to some of your issues as well, too. But that motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 3 on our agenda, and this is the Sheffield Downs final subdivision plat. This is also an item for public hearing. Corey, are you going to address this, or Cassie, or?
I asked Cassie if she wanted to cover. Yeah, this is a quick turnaround. At the last planning commission, this was brought before them. Final plat for Sheffield Downs. You recall it's a portion of the Pages Lane commercial area, AKA Dick's Market. The subdivision involves the U-shaped shopping center just east of the Desert Industries, the old Rogers Memorial Theater, and the grocery store up to the Dick's Ace Hardware. As you recall, it's a residential medium project, allowed up to 6 units an acre. They're exercising the 6 units an acre at single-family home development. They have a committed design to provide some amenities to the project in form of a detention basin, a park, a pavilion. This will be served by private roads, and there will be some common entrances. The west entrance to the project is a shared access for the commercial lot that's in the subdivision, so it can be divided off and become its own separate parcel. but will not be part of the development project, but it will share an access. The existing access that comes in and serves the development will be shared with that commercial lot. The eastern access is unique. There's a distance you see shaded. That is a future joint access for the east property if it ever transitions to residential development. It's recorded on there so that everybody into the subdivision knows that that is a future joint access for that property. Purpose is to reduce the number of curb cuts associated along our collector street. As you may notice in the packet, I think it was brought up originally in the PDO to the council, the discussion of 300 East and the turn movements associated in the traffic. Planning Commission also had that question. Should be an attachment in there from Reeves and Associates. It's not really a traffic study because this is a small development that doesn't generate future impacts in the sense of widening roads, installing stoplights, and their fair contribution to that. But it is an assessment, as their firm does do traffic studies, about the historic traffic that was there, the traffic that's generated by this project, and their opinion on the contribution of the subdivision development to the roadway, which they find negligible in its future build-out. Now, there's a gap. There's no commercial there now, so there's no traffic there now. But they did compare it to leaving it commercial or its past commercial would generate this amount of traffic and turn movements, and the subdivision would generate this amount, and you see a substantial differentiation between what the residential traffic. So our city engineer has reviewed that, accepted that traffic conclusion, and has not challenged the findings of that letter. What you do see in the recommendation is a few tie-up matters coming from the Planning Commission, also suggested by staff to make sure we have the clear items, the path from if this is approved tonight by the council, this is what it takes to get to your recording. So there are conditions set to describe that process. Also, what's unique about this project is how much improvement is interior that are not in a position to be bonded for by the city. So typically if you're doing a public road, if these were all public roads, they would have to bond and ensure the development of those streets, and we would have the bond associated with it, not a construction bond, but an improvement bond, that if they failed to do it, we could capitalize on that bond and hire somebody to install it. I think we've described to you in the past, state law has made a significant headway in the city's capability to ensure improvements are constructed. And the position that Centerville staff has taken over time in multiple developments is if you come into our public roads and tie into our public infrastructure, you will bond for that. And we have clear ability under the law to say when you enter into the public's property, you have to provide a surety that it gets done correctly, or we can call on that constructed. The other is even if they're constructing public streets, they can choose under state law, as we nickname, play in their own sandbox. And they can construct all of their improvements in association without bonding for those improvements. And it's kind of the way I put it to the state is it's their fault if they can't get the roads in to serve their clients who they sell the lots to. But as you know, we will often, after an approval, get roped into the dispute. So the laundry list, if you see, of the other elements that are in the recommendation to you are trying to stay within the legal parameters of the city, but set parameters and expectations that things get done. My conversations with the developer is they're probably going to move a lot faster than what's outlined in here in the recommendation to you. But we do talk about when you can get a building permit for homes to make sure that we have the fire hydrants and the access road. All-weather service means a road base so that you can get in, and the fire department can get in during construction because that's a high-risk situation for fires. Also, by the time the homeowner wants to occupy, let's say the largest lot is the favorite lot in the North 40, that would actually be the South 40 in this case, that they don't get stuck without ability to get into their home. And so we're saying by the time you reach a certificate of occupancy, you have to be to this status. Other directions involving the amenities program and the fencing. We talk about fencing on a lot-by-lot basis, but there's some common area fencing when that has to be installed, and when the amenities that are associated would have to be installed. When it gets turned over to the homeowners association, you have to have certain fences installed. When you reach, we put in the list, and the Planning Commission recommended, when you reach, was it 15? Or they put 15 or 16? I'm not sure which number I picked. Trying to hit 50% of 33.
I think it was 16.
Yeah. When you reach 16 lots, you have to have X installed. That's 50% of the development, and the expectations is this is well underway. Planning Commission agreed with that laundry list, so it's being forwarded to you in the form that you see it. Both the Planning Commission staff are recommending approval given those lengthy list of directions for recording and for performance. Other than that, I believe in the conversations with the developer, they'll probably to some extent be faster than that timeline. But as we all know, we never know what tomorrow brings. And so you put some safety factors into it to try to be reasonably responsible in approving development.
I hope the playground isn't the same as the detention pond.
No, the playground and the plaza are on the upper portion, not down
good.
in the detention in this
That
case.
will work probably better.
Can you, I was reading something else while you were telling us, what again is the purpose of the 222 by 116 area at the upper left corner?
Upper left corner of the shaded,
Yeah.
that's a commercial lot. That's the old bank building that's now the nail salon.
Nail salon bought it.
It is actually an L-shaped lot involved in this development, and we're creating a smaller lot for that building and incorporating the rest of it into the subdivision. So we need to parse it out as its own independent commercial lot.
And it's going to stay commercial.
It's going to stay commercial, and it's not part of the development in the sense of the PDO. It's still a commercial high zone for that property.
The nail shop presently leases there, and they've been remodeling it. They have their name on it, and so that's where they're moving to.
Yeah, it's
purchased
just,
it, right?
it's just included in this plat because they actually have to designate it as a lot and form the final lot. But as Corey said, it's not under the zoning.
And if they decide to change their mind, then what happens?
They're subject to figuring out how they're going to do a PDO to convert it to residential or remarket it as commercial.
And how much space is that? I can't remember how much space is
I don't
220.
remember. I don't remember.
That's
the lot
not even
size.
an acre, is it?
No.
No,
Which means they can't do PDO because it's too small.
correct.
Well, they could amend this one and add
They
it.
can add it back into this one.
You'll likely see that on the east. It's no longer 5 acres left. So when that
That's-
wants to transition, they'll likely have to do an amended general plan. And then we'll see what they're proposing there on the redevelopment.
Thanks, Corey. Any further questions for Corey before we have the applicant present? The applicant, Taylor Spendlove, is here to present, represents Brighton Homes. If I stated any of that wrong, restate.
Depends on who you ask, but it could be Spencer. But it's Taylor Spendlove. I'm with Brighton Homes. We've all seen this a few times, and so I don't have anything else to add. If you have any questions for me, I can answer that. So.
If no questions, then I will open this. This is a public hearing matter. So I will open this now to comments from the public. So the public hearing is now open. Need Jeopardy music going. I don't think I ever had no response to a public hearing. If no responses, then we will close the public hearing. And obviously, there's no responses to public comments from either staff or applicants, and there was no public comments, so I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'll motion to accept the final subdivision plat with the recommendations listed in the December 12th, 2018 staff submittal report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or debate? If not, let's start, do a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
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 It's been a long process.
Was that a full
Nay.
aye or a full statement?
No,
Okay.
I do not like the partial lot. I think it's just a future problem.
I'm actually thinking.
But there's 4 of you that are voting for
Sure.
it, so I'm gonna say nay.
I believe in the future, Bill. I'm gonna think into the future, and I think that lot's not gonna survive as a commercial property once this
I'm talking
division-
both the east
Yeah.
and the south end, east and the west end, both sides.
We'll see. So one question for Spencer.
Doesn't matter, it's already approved.
Sure,
right?
well, this is just a question. Given this approval, what is your timeline still looking like?
So we actually closed on the property November 30th, and we are just waiting for gas. Dominion's really, they're busy right now. We're just waiting for them to cut utilities so the demo guys can get on site. So all of our state applications are in place. They'll be submitting to the city for their demo applications. We're trying to get it paved in April.
So just as a community suggestion, the last big building that went down in that area, the developer made sure the neighborhood was aware of it, so they could see that the start of it coming down. I think that did well for the developer, so I would suggest the same thing.
Yeah, we can send out flyers or something on doorsteps and let them know that it's coming down. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be really good, especially with that building.
Yeah.
It's in many people's hearts.
See, you've never had a council so easy to work with. That's all right.
So that motion, thank you, Taylor. That motion passes 4-1. Okay, moving on to item number 4. This is an update regarding the Island View Park renovation project and the Public Oaks open house. And we have Bruce Cox here from our Parks Department. It looks like you might have brought Lynn with you as well too, but so I don't know if you're both commenting, but you already know for sure, Bruce, because you told me earlier today you were, so come on up.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been asked to come and give a update on the Island View Park conceptual plan, and since you last selected the G. Brown Design as the design company, they've been working on gathering site information, and I've been asked to bring the latest draft of the site conceptual plan, and also talk a little bit about our upcoming open house scheduled for January 10th. That's from 6 to 8, and also give you maybe some expectations of what you can expect at that open house. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the open house first. I gave you the time and the date that it's scheduled for, and G. Brown Design will have a representative here, but staff is actually going to set that up. There will be the latest draft of the conceptual plan put online for people to view for about a week ahead of time before the open house, and then and also for the public can leave comment online, and then at the open house obviously they can make public comment, and then up till the end of the next day, Friday at midnight, we'll still take public comment the day after the open house also, and then that gives Mackenzie time to compile that, summarize that, and give you the results of the public comment from that period of time. The open house will have some large poster-sized diagrams, and the areas that the public can still influence are playground specifics, kinds of activities they would like to see put into the playground. They could also comment on what's titled in the grant as,
There's a pointer right here.
So one of the highlight features of this design is a 3-level playground. Right now, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but the line of construction or phase is this retaining wall. So everything from this retaining wall west is this phase. From the retaining wall east is a future phase of construction. So future phase, the top playground will be constructed in a future phase, but the mid-level playground with connection of slides or climbing surface of some kind down the slope to a lower level playground. And one of the things that you might notice is a change from the conceptual plan that we applied for the grant with, is that G. Brown Design has incorporated in a stairs and sidewalk that go all the way from the top level playground area all the way down to the lower level playground. So before, we didn't have that incorporated in, and so if a mother was with her children here at the top level, parked in the parking lot, they're playing here, and zoom, the kids are gone, but she doesn't want to go down the slide to follow them, she would have had to go around the tennis courts to get down to the next level playground. And so I see that as a really functional improvement on this conceptual plan, that they've added this connecting sidewalk along this side. There is still stairs incorporated in there, but there's access for an adult to quickly get down to the next level of playground in following, watching, and supervising children. So I think that might have been a concern.
I appreciate that one.
Let's see. One of the other changes you might see is that the slope on the west side has now been extended out to give us a little more space to make the slope a little less steep. And this sidewalk lines up with, I have an aerial map, but this lines up with the existing sidewalk in front of Councilman Ivy's house. So this will be a straight sidewalk. Right now there is a flat waterway gutter that runs right along here. And so that'll be taken out. It'll be a 6-inch curving gutter and a 6-foot wide sidewalk adjacent to the curving gutter. There will still be on-street parking available, parallel parking. This is still will continue to be an extra wide section of road. So there's plenty of space for parking actually on both sides of the street for overflow for the cemetery and for folks that want to park down here.
And snow removal.
And a place to put some snow on the sides. I jumped. This is on the grant application is labeled as a sport court. That was left vague so that we could manipulate it to be multiple different things. This is an area that we can. He's drawn in lines of a pickleball court, so it could be a single pickleball court. It could be, we talked about sand volleyball. There's been a sand volleyball court there at the park in the past, and there's the focus group of the 50 citizens that came together to help put together the first conceptual plan. They liked, not so much because they love sand volleyball, but they liked having an area of sand for kids to play in the sand. This idea right here is if this is not a sand volleyball, the designer has put a curbing that this could be a sand play area with sand play toys and features it's made for kids to go dig in and play with the sand. There's different options and things that could be. And so that's one of the ideas, is that part of this lower playground would be more for little tots, and there would be a sand play area, smaller swing set, possibly, and all of this would be able to be changed completely as far as what goes in these playground areas. That's an area where the public could give their input as to what they would like to see. And this could be something that, some of the ideas is sand volleyball, pickleball court. We recently have been thinking about the idea of putting in exercise equipment, outdoor exercise equipment. This could be kind of a fitness pad where while kids are playing on the playground, this could be where people could come and do a 7-minute workout or a 10-minute workout of some kind. Another idea that's a possibility is outdoor table tennis, that we could put in 4 or 6 ping pong tables, concrete permanent ping pong tables that are outdoor tables that people could show up and have a ping pong tournament or play table tennis in a group setting where there's, lots of people have a ping pong table, but nobody has 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 where they could do a tournament. And that idea actually, I'd seen that at a hotel resort where on the pool deck, they had multiple outdoor ping pong tables, and they held a ping pong tournament, and my little boy and I entered in it. It was kind of a fun thing. So just a number of different ideas that this could be. Any questions so far? Any things on there that you don't understand what they are, or would like some explanation as to what they might be?
So that mid-level parking lot survived?
It's being expanded. Currently, there's 5 spaces, 4 or 5 spaces. It's being expanded out to about 15 spaces. So it'll serve better the pavilion. The pavilion, if you compare it to the existing pavilion, the actual footprint is smaller, but because the existing pavilion is octagon shaped and has a center pole, you can only fit 6 or 7 picnic tables under, and this will also accommodate the same number of picnic tables with a little bit smaller footprint, because it won't have a center pole that you have to work around.
Nice.
Other questions? I have one other thing to talk about. This staircase is critical in that we will be running a new sewer. This restroom currently does not have a sewer run to it. It just has a septic tank. So one of the improvements is we will be running a sewer to this restroom, and the future phase shows a new pavilion with a restroom on the top level. And so in this phase, we'd like to, while this is all torn up to build this parking lot and this tennis court area is all being rebuilt, we'd like to put the sewer line, and also our culinary drinking water comes in from this street and comes into the park from here and runs down this hill. And it needs to be replaced. It's an old steel line that's rusting out. So we'd like to continue to run the sewer and the water line up to this top level and stub it off. So the future phase we'll just have to connect across the field to that. The construction manager for G. Brown Design has looked at this and said, this is going to be really hard to do from the top, and that he strongly recommends, if we can figure out the funding, to put this staircase in in this phase, so they can do it from the bottom, put this staircase in, and also this connecting sidewalk, even though they would just be stubbed off or maybe tied into the existing sidewalk temporarily. If that work could be done, it would make it much more cost-effective and easier for the contractor to not have to come back in from the top level, trying so careful not to ruin this new retaining wall and these new tennis courts, trying to excavate and put in concrete staircases.
Bruce, do you have any rough estimates on what that would cost to bring that up and stub it off and to put in the staircase? Any ideas at all?
Stubbing off's minimal. I think we would do that anyway. The cost would come in putting in the extra concrete stairs and doing that. I can get you some costs. I don't have a number for you on that. That also reminds me of one other thing that the designer asked me to mention. You see here, they're intending this stairs to not be formal stairs, concrete, nice stairs with handrail. They're intending this to be a timbers or maybe possibly even stone. It would be a more rough, more natural looking staircase. That the idea is that the way for everyone to use is this sidewalk to access from the street, this sidewalk, or of course to drive up and park and come here. And this would just be basically a shortcut, and it would be putting into place a way for someone to shortcut down the hill without them just creating their own dirt trail shortcut down the hill. But they would like to make this a less formal staircase. This is right now showing kind of a little viewing area with park benches so they can sit here on the edge of the hill and look out over the cemetery and out at sunset and the island view of Island View Park. Another thing that would be a new addition will be a dumpster enclosure. We've had some success this last year. We tried a pilot, if you will, a pilot program of taking away the trash cans from a few of our park pavilions that have a dumpster close by in the parking lot, and asking people to pack it in, pack it out, and not require us to check their garbage cans once or twice a day and things like that. And it worked out really well. And so we couldn't do that at Island View because there's no dumpster to ask them to put their trash into. But this would allow us to have a dumpster that we would do that same thing, ask people to, hey, everything you bring into the park, please take it out with you, or here's a dumpster if you've got trash and things you want to put in the dumpster. It will be a little tricky. Just a garbage truck getting up. This might be something kind of like we have here at City Hall, where they wheel the dumpster out, dump it, and push it back into the enclosure. We of the options of where we had to put it, we thought that would be the best. Not having, sometimes a dumpster gets smelly, and we didn't want to have it too close to the pavilion here.
I would still think we would need some garbage cans as big as that is. Probably not going to walk the full length of the park to put my stuff in the dumpster, so I'm thinking we may need some garbage cans there to keep it from being trashy.
So we have that situation. So your question is, will people walk that far to put their trash in the dumpster? First of all, they have to go out that way if they drove a vehicle in, so they're going to be going that way, and their vehicle might be right here. So it's no farther distance really than they're walking their own vehicle. And we have a much larger distance both at our Freedom Hills Park and even at our Smoot Park. The dumpsters are a greater distance than this from the pavilion, and we've had great success this last summer in that the park's been cleaner than when we had 6 trash cans all around.
Well, good for people.
People actually.
And the dumpsters are usually full.
Yeah, they are. Not always with park refuge, but they are full.
Do you have an issue with the dumpsters being against somebody's backyard?
This is a property line between two homes right here, and it is the farthest corner from either of those lots. If you look at the aerial, I have an aerial here if you want to look at it.
That's fortunate.
It's probably no closer to these homes than if the dumpster were here to these homes. So there's pretty good distance. They're pretty deep lots there. They have a swimming pool up in this area, and there's currently trees, and this is also a utility corridor. There's telephone poles along here with power lines and things too.
So, Bruce, let me just clarify then, the initiative the reason for having Bruce come initially was to make sure you didn't have expectations for what the architects were preparing for the open house and what kind of flexibility there would be for the public to influence. So that's why I wanted him to explain this. So there will be some opportunity for him to influence some features of this, but he's not going to be bringing 2 or 3 different layouts, if you will. Okay. And
is there going to be some way of designating on it in a different color or something? This is flexible, this is flexible.
Exactly what I was thinking. I think, yes, I think what they were planning is coming with different options, different footprint size things that they could show. This could be this many different things. One of the things I mentioned to the designer is I don't feel this T of concrete, this sidewalk here and here, is necessary because it breaks up 4 little turf areas that then have to have design sprinklers and it would save us some money to not put in all that extra concrete right there and just to leave grass all the way around the 3 sides of the field. He kind of agreed with me and said, yeah, that's good. So there'll be things like that where we tweak some things, maybe take out some of these sidewalks. That seems to be like a lot of sidewalk to me all around that area. We don't necessarily need that much sidewalk in that little area. A couple other little things. It's hard to see, but this is intended to be like a drinking fountain right here that'll serve the pavilion and the playground. There's also a drinking fountain planned here. These are, there'll be all new tennis lights put on. If you play tennis up there, try to use the lights. They're not they've worn out, and they're not. The covers are all clouded and broken, and so that'll be nice. The new tennis lights. Still seating, park benches around. This little area here could be a picnic table with a single little pavilion or something, or maybe a place where people were waiting to play tennis or watching others that are playing tennis here at the north end. Just right now, it's just kind of as a turf area. They've done a little bit of design. This is a tree, a large sycamore tree that's existing, and this also a large tree that they've done some design around those two trees to protect them. And one thing, one of my people pointed out, are those the only two trees they're saving? And no, the other trees are in sloped areas where construction won't be affecting them. So all the trees that we can save will be saved, but those were two that were in areas of construction that they wanted to try to work around and protect those. But we will lose some trees. One of the issues
Are we losing all the pine trees there on the southwest where the sidewalk is coming through?
What can be saved will be saved, but there will be some that will have to go, I'm sure. Okay. On this side also, there's some large pine trees that currently we have a 24-inch high-pressure gas line that runs down through the park, right, from the top level all the way down this road. We have to run a sewer line, and then we also, the drainage from all of Island View Drive comes down Island View Drive into this parking lot and drains to here, and that's all new. But then from here, it goes this way across the park and then comes down, and it goes from a much larger pipe down to a much smaller pipe and then comes down this way. So one of the improvements that we're going to make is, along with the sewer line, we're going to run a new storm drain line that will match the size of the existing line in the parking lot that brings all of that storm drain water from Island View Drive will now come this way. And our guess is that the reason why it downsized so much is because they had to get over this high pressure gas line. And so they have rules about how close you can have another line now. And so we're going to just cut it off here and bring it down the same corridor, the sidewalk, staircase, into the parking lot. Parking lot will have a storm drain right here that'll drain from the four corners into the center here, and then the storm drain underground will run also down this road. There's rules about how close we can have the sewer, the storm drain, the high pressure gas line, the culinary water line, and also our irrigation water line all run up this roadway. If we can't fit that in that roadway space, we may have to widen the roadway 4 or 5 more feet, and that causes us to lose a few more pine trees. So that's a possibility. We'll see what we can do. It depends kind of on where the gas line is. If it's over to the side, it gives us a lot more room to work. If it's right down the middle, chances are we have to widen that road.
The only challenge I see with this open house is when we're looking for public input on the areas that can have amenity changes, we have to somehow communicate there are some sunk costs. Those courts are already taken out of that budget. These pieces are missing, so that we don't set a false expectation that you can have everything you want down in this corner and we could do something up in this corner as well. And I'm not sure how we adequately communicate that, but I don't want to set that expectation that the money is as infinite as the ideas.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think they need to for sure know that when it's done and all of a sudden the upper part, nothing's been done, I thought the park was going to be redone, you know, that they understand this is phase one.
This is phase one, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that conceptual plan did go out to all the public to see phase one and phase two. So there might be some folks that remember, hey, I thought there was a full court basketball court being put in, and that's in phase two. That's suggested. One negative note on the grant is that this Land Water Conservation Fund grant that we've received for phase one has not been funded for a future. So cross your fingers that there will be that grant available for phase two. If not, we'll have to just look for other ways of doing phase two.
Thanks, Bruce. Any other?
How are the lights on the tennis court controlled? And I guess it would apply to any of the tennis courts in town.
They're a good question. So how are the lights controlled? We have a timer in the utility closet in both the Smoot Park and the Island View Park, where we set the window of time that power goes up to the on-off switches. So we set a few hours in the morning, maybe from 6 in the morning till 8 in the morning, and then we do another window of time from just before sundown, maybe depending on when that is, to 10 o'clock. Sometimes we'll let it go to 10:15, set the window, and then on the courts are on-off switches that the users then that doesn't turn the lights on. That just sends power to those switches, and then when users come within those windows of time, they can turn the lights on and hopefully, if it's citizens, they'll turn the lights off when they leave. But if they don't turn the lights off, at 10:15, the timer shuts them off.
The problem at Smoot, though, is that if someone turns them on and then turns them off, then when you go to turn them on again, they don't turn on.
They do have a warm-up period, yeah.
Like, they won't turn on at all for a long time after.
Yeah.
So,
You know,
so if we could figure out what that,
It's about 15 minutes. If somebody
which
shuts
is,
off the power, the lights, there's a delay before, they're like the ball field lights, that it takes 15 minutes before they, we have the same issue actually over at Founders
so
Park, or
my
Smoot
point
City
is
Park.
that it has trained me as a user of that court to, as a courtesy, leave them on, right? Where normally I would want to turn them off
Even if no one's there.
to save the electricity. Yeah, because on summer nights, someone's going to come within a few minutes and be like, why don't these lights work? And then leave.
So for the life of me, I can't remember where it was, but they actually had a reservation system that went through your phone that when you registered to use the court, you had the light control for the period that you were registered. And then when that court was unregistered, the lights went off. I don't know where that's, I'm drawing a total blank, but you might want to look into that for a future.
And I don't know that we have to do that way with the new lights. The new lights might.
I bet there's better technology.
LEDs.
Yeah.
You're not going to need the old technology with the starter that warms them up and then the lights come on and it takes a while. LEDs are instant light. They don't have to warm up. They don't have the ballast that.
But the ball's a different color when it's not under sodium lights. How will you be able to play? No, I'm just kidding.
My guess
You know,
is,
that's another thing. LEDs, they're able to match all different colors, so you can get just about any color of light.
Yeah.
my guess those lights will be different. The newer technology, because when I go to Farmington to the pickleball courts, and they've just been turned off, boom, you
Yeah,
turn
I'm
right
sure,
back on.
I'm sure the new lights, that won't be an issue. I'm sure, not only will we save energy while they're on, but even if you left them on the whole time, it'd be less energy than what we spent on just having them on for an hour or so.
Yeah.
So. We found that with our Christmas lights, that it's a fraction of the cost of electricity what they used to be. Now they're all LEDs.
Great.
Wonderful. That's a fun report. Thanks, Bruce. It's,
I don't know if Lynn had something else that, tomorrow, I meet with G. Brown Design again, and we'll go over more things, and there'll be more improvements to the draft, and they'll have, they'll be working to get everything ready for this open house.
Just kudos again, Lynn, on getting us $600,000 while the window was open to get it.
so it's getting fun right now.
We will. Lynn,
You'd better be up
come
with
up,
the mic.
because somebody's going to ask what you said. Could you come up? Just, I know. Sorry.
Lynn Kennedy from the Parks Committee. The only thing is the committee's now going to focus on two things, and that is notifying everybody who gave us an email address to notify them that, of the open house and get as much participation as possible, and then participation in the survey. And so we're probably going to spend most of our time on that the next time. But so that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5. This is zoning code amendment, table of uses and definitions for commercial medium zone, South Main Street corridor. This was tabled.
You like that sound?
And do what to your kids.
If you'd taken it, maybe we would have got a high-tech pointer next time. This was tabled from 2 weeks ago for further discussion. And I'm assuming Cassie wants to speak because she's right up here. Do you want to speak, Cassie?
Just to introduce the table that I made,
Okay.
as directed by Councilman Inns last time.
Table.
Thanks. So this is all of the uses that we have in the city, and you can see they're separated by commercial, residential, industrial uses, etc. And you can see the highlighted ones are the ones that are proposed to be amended by the Planning Commission. Just most of them moved over to the conditional use permit column, with the exception of 2. And so you can see pretty clearly how many permitted uses we have in the CM zone, which is 12, and how many conditional use permits we have, which is around 8, I think, and many not permitted uses. So hope that that answers your question, and I'm happy to answer any more you may have.
Was that in response to Councilman Ince's?
Yes.
So Councilman Enswa, any questions on that? Or anybody?
Not that I want to
I'm
ask.
not putting you on the spot.
Not that I want to ask at this point. I'm still digesting.
Okay. Any other questions on the table, or as Cassie just invited, on anything else? Nothing? Okay. Any discussion amongst council? If not, we obviously have a zoning code amendment here that I'm trying to find the number on it, that
2018-25?
Yeah, 2018-25, that we're looking for some sort of motion on.
So I am sure, as many of you city council people have received, people that are kind of upset that we're putting this through the week of Christmas. I think we have more people that would like to be heard. It was interesting. I had a phone call today that was very much in favor of Shoops in the fire department, and they said, just vote this through, enough. And then they turned around and started complaining about some of the things that are down in the industrial park. And once I got talking to them, I said, do you realize that's what you want to put on Main Street? And they were like, no. So I thought when the Planning Commission came through, to begin with, it was going to be 2 or 3 new items. There's so many. I personally feel like I need more time to go through each one of these and see, what the potential is so that we can put more options on Main Street, but that we're careful. I also think that in conjunction with the overlay, we need to kind of look at them hand in hand. And so I would put off that we, and I don't know the exact wordage, whether we table or postpone this until we're looking at the overlay too, so that we can mesh the two together, but do it in a possibly quick fashion or as fast a fashion as we can, so that we can get this taken care of and finally done.
I'd like to just respond to that in that I've worked here at City Hall for now over 11 years. And maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times have I seen as thorough a process as what's already happened here on this issue. The Planning Commission went above and beyond in their length of time that they spent, their thoroughness, and I will say that they were following the exact direction of the council, and if there's any question on that, we need to just go back and listen to recordings, because focusing on uses was the exact direction of the council. So we have a property owner who's interested in investing money into our city and improving a building, and I've heard for years, well, what we've put on the table is too prohibitive and we're never going to get any investment. And here we have willing investors and have gone through an extraordinarily thorough process. And my personal opinion is that to lengthen that even more, I can understand if you have hesitations about some of these things, pick which ones you're not sure on, pull them out tonight, move forward on ones that you feel good about. But let's keep this ball rolling. Let's do the business of the city. And like I say, it's already been a long time coming, in my opinion.
Yes, it took the Planning Commission all that time, and now I feel like we're supposed to be doing in a couple of weeks what they've done in months, and I would like to have the time to go over each one of these. I mean, things were brought up to me in a conversation today that I hadn't thought of, and so I'm personally not ready or comfortable, and I think the property owners would probably benefit in us being a little more thorough.
I just like it on record that I think the overlay obviously is important to discuss. It's our next item on our menu, our agenda. But I'm like Councilwoman Fillmore. I mean, there's some uses here that we can scratch some, or we can keep some, we can get something done. I personally, if you're talking about one property owner, I mean, you have a design put before you that substantially improves what an existing building you have, and that fits within the existing overlay as well too. They just need some conditional use permit on it, and you're going to change a building that, when the fire station moves out, is going to be really dilapidated and old, to a very nice looking building. So I personally feel very strongly about that issue as well too, that there's got to be some way to make something work. And with your table of uses, without having to combine it with the overlay. And we are discussing the overlay right after as well too.
Correct. And if you give the uses, and then you change the overlay, you could cost people a lot of money, because they're jumping through hoops to try to get through the overlay, which may not even be the hoops in a couple of months.
But isn't, and maybe this is a legal matter, aren't you going to have existing buildings or existing designs that have been approved under the old overlay? Aren't they going to be grandfathered under the old overlay before you do a new overlay?
No. Well, it depends when they apply, but.
Huh?
It depends when they apply, but certainly if you add some uses tonight, they could implement and use those uses. Yes, they could apply for them.
Okay.
I shouldn't talk tonight because I'm tired, but I'm going to weigh in. As I've gone through this table of uses and the proposed additional uses, I've been amazed at how innocuous things sound compared to what the actual definition allows. And it's hard for me to kind of capture how much damage could be done under something that seems very basic and gentle and compatible with residential. And I realize that there are property owners who want to know what's going to be allowed, but we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic, and the job of a republic is to protect the individuals from the majority, as well as to listen to the majority. It's a delicate balance, and we on this City Council have that responsibility to listen to the many and to listen to and protect the one. And we have residential property owners on this street who want to be protected, and it's our job to do that as well. And I don't feel a big rush for the new property owners. I know they're wonderful people, but the fire station hasn't moved, and they're not going to move in the next couple of months. And if we put this off and talk about the whole of Main Street altogether, it's not going to, in my view of it, put them so far behind, because they can't do anything to the property before the fire station leaves anyway. So I'd be in favor of looking at it holistically, because allowing one thing on this list to go through and then changing what the overlay allows changes the nature of what that use that we've allowed now can do. And I think that's something that we need to do hand in hand. It's very irresponsible to do one and then change something else.
Well, I know that you're right, Councilwoman Meekum, when you say that the Planning Commission went through a lot of weeks of this. They also had three different open houses? Mm-hmm. And there was not great participation. So you can talk about, hey, it wasn't advertised and that sort of thing, but you know, we witnessed tonight when the issue is really hits home really hard. I mean, somehow people find out about it. So I agree with Councilwoman Ivy as well too, that we have the right that we need to act to what the majority of the public would feel. So we got to determine what the majority of the public is. I think for a long time we've delayed on this when the majority of the public feels differently than what's been done for so many months and weeks and years?
Years, I would say, because the bottom line is that Main Street has been being worked on for years, and what we've heard the most heartburn about is density residential. And so then the very clear conversation and direction was, okay, if we're going to take away the incentive of density residential, then the reality is what we need to do is try to expand uses. Otherwise, we're always picking something, and what we're picking at, and I understand about protecting the one, I understand about listening to concerns. You're always saying yes to something. And if we just continue to whittle this away and whittle this away and whittle this away, what we're saying yes to is a continually blighted Main Street that is dilapidating, and that is what is going to hurt property values, and that is what is going to hurt our citizenry and those that live closest to Main Street more than anything else.
You know, it's been a while since we had the state ombudsman come and train us, but what I remember from that training is that it's not the Planning Commission's job to listen to the public clamor. That's the job of the City Council. So while I appreciate their efforts and their open houses, I think some of our citizens have learned that over the years, that coming and telling the Planning Commission what they think doesn't necessarily impact it, because that's not the Planning Commission's job. It's the City Council's job. And it's when we reach out to the property owners and we say, okay, what do you think? What is your opinion? You are the stakeholders. We're the ones who are charged with listening to them. So
but we tabled
I'd
this.
like some more time to listen to them.
But we've had this on 2 agendas now. This is an empty room.
On Christmas,
Well, it's not an open
I
house
almost
tonight.
didn't come tonight because, hi, Christmas is in how many days, and we don't usually hold a meeting this week.
I think one of the things we're going to have to look at, and I think we have to be very circumspect with the public in the near future, if we haven't already communicated this, and I'll say it so that it's on record. Centerville as a town needs to determine its identity and how much it's willing to put out of its own pockets in terms of its tax base. Costs don't go down, they go up. And if Main Street wants to protect itself, which there are plenty of property owners that talk to me about, hey, there are certain uses that we feel are completely incompatible, would destroy our property values. The flip side is if you're not willing to allow certain uses, how much property tax are you willing to endure to make up the difference in services? Because if it's not coming from a commercial base, it's coming from your property tax. So where is that dividing line? I do get a lot of very polarized, don't do anything, do everything. It's really hard to get that balance narrowed down, but I think it's time we reframe the discussion with the public. It's just, where do you think this is going to be funded from? If this is so objectionable, whatever the use is, and I'm not going to pick a particular one, but that use is so objectionable, how much is it worth in your private personal property taxes to maintain services? We know, for example, it's easy to point to Utopia. They go up by 3% a year. That's 2.5. They go up every year. That doesn't change, and that will be through the life of that bond. Costs of workforce, they go up every year. So what do we do? If the tax base doesn't change because we don't revitalize or change what's on Main Street, then property owners are going to feel the pinch. That's just all there is to it. As to the discussion about how far we move in terms of our uses, one of the things that engineers have to deal with all the time is how you tune a system. And if you add too many things into the system, you swing too far the other direction, it's just as bad as if you didn't touch the system, because now you're in chaos. You don't know what you've adjusted. So whereas I think there's something that needs to be done, I think it needs to be smaller in scope so that the adjustments actually can be reflected and we can see what that change actually does. So we talked before, we have 3 basic levers here. We have the uses, we have the zoning, we have the density. And I think what I'm hearing, Robin, maybe I'm hearing you incorrectly, your concern is that we have way too many uses and that there's some smaller number that might work. Is that, or is I paraphrasing that wrong?
No, I think we have uses, and I think we can add to those uses. I just think we need to know what our overlay zone is going to be before we add to those uses. So that we can change this and it could put a great big hole in here, but I think it needs to be done in a reasonably quickly time. I don't think we need to be putting this off for 3 more years. I think it needs to be, you know, whether we need to hold a work meeting or what, we need to decide kind of where we want to go with the overlay, and then how the overlay is going to affect these uses, and then we can come together with, because there are parts of the overlay that I think we're going to want to keep.
Sure, and I could see that on the overlay if somebody says, yeah, if I don't have to come up to the curb and I can revitalize my building within my existing use, that has appeal for people, I'm sure. I think where we run into trouble is it's the same problem if you adjust one of your factors too much. If you adjust two only slightly, did you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? I don't know. This is a tough one. That's why councils have dealt with this for a very, very long time. I'm not opposed to making some adjustments to the table of uses, and likewise, I'm not opposed to making changes to the overlay. The question I guess I'd have for staff is if the council wanted to deal with both of them, smaller in scope, so like a small adjustment to table uses, adjustment to the overlay, what's the time frame that would be accomplishable on that in terms of what noticing windows, what are we looking at? Because I hear Robin saying quickly, but what is that? What does that translate to in actual legal terms?
The simple answer, noticing for any changes on a land use will probably take you 2.5 months. Whether the 2.5 months is sufficient is your question. So an example is that if you have for surety knowledge in the overlay that you want a couple of tweaks, and you have comfortable uses that you think match those tweaks, probably fairly fast. My suspicion is that you'll do some more overhauling, because I have not yet heard from the council that the overlay that's in place is satisfied. It may be. Maybe somehow we can get to the point that the overlay is satisfactory, because it's a useful a tool. It's not the ordinance construct that's bad. It's whether it fits into your community construct is whether it's bad. And to date, the overlay has not been favored. So I suspect as we've gone and whittled away in different tensions that are coming, that you'll do a more substantial overhaul. And if you do a more substantial overhaul to the overlay, you've got this extreme. You know, the minor few changes because you know you want to preserve the overlay, to I want to maybe change and go away from the overlay, but you don't open it up at the open house to talk about parks and cemetery. But you want to engage the public. And that's going to take a more significant amount of time. So example is I provided a skeleton, taking the concept of performance standards and putting it as a potential replacement. If you choose that route, you're looking at a significant amount of time, because you'll want to engage the public because they're seeing something new that they really don't understand now. Because the overlay is understood. It's understood negatively, but it's understood. And so the question before the council is in that negative understanding, is it really a few tweaks, or is it major tweaks that cause you to reformat and reframe? And you know, you're looking at 6 months now in your investment. So I didn't give you an answer at all.
I heard 2.5 to 6 months.
Right, I'd like to try,
I'd
like to set a goal for the 2.5 months. I'd like to have a work session where we sit down and we all bring our ideas onto each one of these uses, but first we look at the overlay and figure out, you know, what we want with the overlay, and then how these uses are going to fit in with that.
Yeah, and if you can take the negative view of the overlay and tweak it to a more palatable place, yeah, that would be a shorter duration.
So Robert, are you looking at like a combined, so would we be, to Tammy's point, would we be able to come up with an acceptable set of uses in a time frame that lets be less than 11 years, where we can combine the two?
I would hope so. I would hope so.
11 years? We won't any of us be here.
Well, I was just saying, based on her prior experience and the lack of movement, I'm hearing an 11-year time.
That's how long we've been working on this.
But actually, it was changed, and then the overlay was changed.
Oh, I'm being a little bit
I know,
facetious.
but
I mean, there's been
everybody
some
has
changes.
their ideas. I truly believe that the overlay handicapped the changes that were made. Had the overlay not been laid on top of that, I think we'd see a lot more of Main Street developed right now. I think the overlay stifled it, and partly because you gave an incentive and then you took the incentive away, but then nothing has been done since that incentive was taken away. So you've said to the people, we want you to do this, and we're going to give you this great big incentive of density in order to make it possible for you to do this. Oh, never mind, we're not going to give you the density, but we still want you to do everything we've told you to do. And so it wasn't economically feasible.
What I hear is your work session really defines how fast you'll.
That's right. Let's get it and see how we can do on it.
But I think in deference to what is the timeline, if this gets tabled, a modified version of this needs to, we need to set that. I think it's fair for the council to commit to a date time of when this is, when we're having this is the actual vote, there isn't any more, I mean, obviously somebody can table it, but at least an open commitment. This is when we're having the overlay and this table discussion locked together in a night's work. So
I have mixed emotions. I'd like to see something happen, and yet I am convinced that doing something like this in December is foolish, because we're going to get a lot of blowback from it. I'm the one that proposed tabling it for 2 weeks, so probably should have tabled it for 4 or 6. I have a significant number of issues with definitions and looking at the charts and things that are permitted, conditional use permitted, and not permitted. So for example, just a couple of them, we've got media services is both permitted and not permitted, which I don't understand. I don't know what media services means. We did catering limited, we have catering general is not permitted. I believe I voted for catering limited. I'm not sure that was a good vote. In some ways it was a good vote. The size of the truck that sits out in front of that on the street is unsightly. I've gone back and looked on all the initial drawings. It shows it being back along the building where it was out of sight. On a practical basis, it's seldom, if ever, there. I'm only one vote, but I'm not ready to vote on it tonight. I don't want to see this whole thing go out another 3 to 4 months, but I'm not ready to vote tonight.
I could accept that. I understand. So what I want to make sure is, from a parliamentary procedure, we do not need to remand this back down to the Planning Commission. We can table this and then modify it at a future point if that's what we decided to do, correct? Because I don't want to see this go down and then the table of uses, and then we get into a whole death spiral on that.
Parliamentary procedures, yes, and Lisa can weigh in on the length of tabling. For me, if you table it too extensively, or if you do significant adjustments that are not within a reasonable time frame from the recommendation, you should be renoticing that, at least for your discussion and how you want to reach out for that renoticing. Remember, amendments are posted in, I don't know, we had posted the paper at the Planning Commission, but not at the City Council.
No.
But as long as we're just
they're only on the website, and so the synergy is lost if you go 2 months from now. You're losing the focus of synergy, and then folks know it's maybe tabled, but then it'll be the surprise of, well, okay, I got past Christmas, but now, whoa, how did this get back on 2 months later and I didn't even know it? That's your tension.
Sure, I'm with you on that, but I guess in my mind, I'm not seeing a difference between if the council sat down and went no on this use, no on this use, and amended it tonight, or it was tabled and the same piece of legislation were brought up and that same process were gone through at a future point, how that changes picture any.
But you can go a couple of meetings and edit and modify and still keep that synergy.
Right. My intent is not to create two different paths. If we're trying to get both of these done, I just want to make sure this stays in motion so the other one catches up with it.
And I think we'll just have to wait and see how long it takes you, because I agree with Corey. If you just want to table this, and we usually recommend that you table to a date certain, so sometimes we've put things on, so if people are monitoring it, they know, oh, I need to come back on, the second meeting in January, and then you table it again. At least we have a record that we continue to, table it to a date certain. If you just table it and we get back to it in June, I think that is not following the intent of the law. You could argue it follows the law, but yeah, it's better to, so if you do this in 2 or 3 months, and my suggestion would be that you table it to a date certain, which is your first meeting in February. We'll see where we're at in February. People can keep monitoring it. And then if it turns out that it's a long period, or you're, already sending something to the Planning Commission, it's not that hard to send it back through all the noticing again. But I think we'll just have to see how long that time frame takes.
What if we table it to the second meeting in February? So it gives us a little longer.
February or January?
Second meeting in February.
In
Yeah, that's
February,
fine.
because January is not going to give us enough time. If we do it to the second week in February, hopefully that'll give us enough time that we may have.
Yeah, the thing that I like, I look to the pending ordinance doctrine, and the law gives us 6 months. I think the courts recognize that some things take a long time, and so if you're going to work on this, but I do think if you table it to the date certain of the second meeting in February, we'll bring it back. Because you've already closed your public hearing, but that's another thing that you can do is say, well, we're going to compromise. We're not going back to the Planning Commission, but we're going to renotice for public comment for here, which I would also probably suggest if, you're making some changes.
I like that.
Well, and with the overlay discussion, I don't think it'd be separate in the minds of individuals that come to talk to us from the public, so we'll probably get feedback on both.
True. Well, and that's the other thing. If it's all one ordinance amendment, it's going to go to the Planning Commission anyway and then come back up. But just remember that the City Council does make the decisions. The Planning Commission is the recommending body, and the City Council can go in a different direction if you feel that that's in the best interest of the community. And so even if it goes back to the Planning Commission and they recommend the same thing, you ultimately will be making the decision. Okay.
So with all that discussion, very good discussion, by the way, do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion that we table this until the second meeting in February.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
So do we need to throw some staff direction out there for the other piece of this, or I don't think do we articulate enough of what we were trying to do, Robin?
No.
I didn't think so. It's just
So question, Corey. There are items on the list that are not included in the definitions. So where do both come from?
Time.
Okay.
So you have different tracks of time, and you likely have tables of uses that have been borrowed from other matrices, but that have not been officially given a definition. So time makes a disparity between the definitions and the.
But everything in our chart should have a definition, so you could go back and say, oh, we've noticed now that it's in our chart, let's have a definition for it. Most of them should be in the definitions.
I think
Most are, but there are several that
Yeah,
are.
I think we need a
let us know
work
if you
meeting
saw some.
where we can sit down and say, okay, Corey, this use, is this a possibility? Is that a possibility? And we can go through all of these and figure out where we're at.
Yeah, I think you got two tracks if you're going that way. We can talk about the uses, so
But
that
we
you can have
also
a
need to
better,
talk about the
better
overlay.
clarity and understanding from your standpoint of what the uses are, and then have time to think about it and think of those unintended consequences if you can get there, because that's sometimes hard. But then you have to match in, though, if you want to tie the overlay together, you've
That's
got to
correct.
decide, is the overlay staying intact, and what parts are you uncomfortable with?
So maybe we should have a work meeting on the overlay first. and then have an overlay, a work meeting on.
Because if the overlay needs to be amended, we'd run it back through the process.
Right.
To find out what the recommendation comes back to you as.
So let's see how soon we can get a work meeting on the overlay.
But I think what's important about this work meeting is no longer the concepts of the overlay. I think, you know, the sleeves are up and you just write down your target. As I said, the overlay is understood. It's just understood negatively. So let's hit those negatives and see, you know, how that negative plays out into the overlay will determine structurally whether the overlay can be maintained.
So I think from what I'm hearing about the time windows and everything, if the intent is second week in February, can you back up from that in terms of a schedule of work meeting? Basically, the decision windows have to be understood. Right. And that's, I think, what needs to happen.
Well, your difficult part is your January. I think Steve has booked you. So your earliest work meeting is likely in February.
And on a non-council night?
January 29th.
How about if we have a work meeting just prior to the Parks meeting on the 11th? 10th, excuse me.
I can't do that.
Well, that starts at 6. The open house, you mean?
The open house starts at 6.
Starts at 6. Ends at 8.
How about after?
I'm open.
I'm here.
I'm salary, so I'm always here at your direction.
We appreciate that.
I would like to see it happen quickly. I think it has. Tammy is absolutely right. It has dragged on. We keep talking about it.
Well, you might have a built-in audience, you know, just say, okay, everybody, we're done talking parks, come on in, let's talk Main Street.
Yep.
You might get more on if you advertise it that way.
Do we talk again about changes to the overlay? Does that have to go through the Planning Commission first?
Yes.
But
You can, the council can.
You can direct what you want them to consider, but it still procedurally has to run through the state land use notice process and recommendation. When it comes to land use ordinances, it must come to you from a recommendation from the Planning Commission. You can direct them what you want them to consider, so you can narrow the task.
And isn't that kind of what you proposed to or told the Planning Commission was happening?
Yeah,
At
if
the
you've
last Planning
read that
Commission?
last memo or watched the meeting.
So that's where, instead of giving them this huge broad thing, and they're doing exactly what we asked them to do, they're looking at every little thing in it, and then it comes back and we're like, no, that wasn't what we meant. We can give them a direction saying, we think this would be good, we think this would be good, we don't think that would be good. Then they can look at it and say to us, yes, we agree with you, or no, we think you need to tweak this and we need to tweak that. But that gives them a better direction, so they're not wasting all of their time on something that we're not really interested in. If we give them, I think that's been part of our problem, is we don't give them a good enough direction. We send it down and they try their hardest to please us, but it gets too big and too out of control. So I think if we say to them, this is our goal, this is kind of in the direction we're going to go in, then they can come back and say to us, no, you know, that's wrong, or yeah, we think that would probably work.
In the context of the overlay, right? But okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, in the context of the overlay. So.
So what about the 10th?
I'm here.
I can do it.
So let me.
Oh, Robin.
It's okay. I'll sacrifice.
Let me throw out an alternative to you. On the 2nd of January, that's a Wednesday, which is when you're scheduled to have a meeting. I don't think there's a business that has to, that you could do away with your council meeting that night. But there's a couple other things that I think you ought to have. One is the work session with the legislators that night, which was proposed for the 15th, but Senator Weiler cannot come on the 15th. But he and Representative Hawks can come on the 2nd. We may not get Senator Adams, but the mayor has agreed that we ought to go ahead on the 2nd if we can get Weiler and Hawks, as long as council agrees with that. So that would be, I'd say, at 5:30. Then we may be ready for the RDA to meet and consider the tax increment request that the committee's been working on for some time now, including another meeting today by that committee. If we could have that ready, that would be at, say, 7 o'clock. And then at 8 o'clock, you could have your work session. Or you could have your work session at 7, schedule your RDA for after that. Is that a possibility?
Yes.
I think that's a great
Yeah, I
idea.
think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody brings the eggnog.
So Mayor, you and I guess you and I talk about which order that would fall in, though. We'd have the legislators first for the dinner at 5:30, and then the other two would be, you and I could, I guess, talk about how do we sequence those.
And does that keep the ball rolling and get, or do we need to schedule some others as well too, like a couple, 3 weeks after that? I'm looking at you and asking.
Yeah, the ball
your
rolling
opinion.
is that's probably what I'm assuming is the overlay discussion. You still have whatever coming out of that, depending on the timing of the use and whether you want to pare it down in the interim and then add others later as the overlay comes, wraps itself around, whether there's just some that you just don't want to include. You can adjust that list to be as narrow or broad as you feel comfortable, knowing where you want to go with the overlay.
That's great.
All right. Okay. I would assume then that that means item 6, that one's being, we need a motion.
No. Oh, the item,
Item 6 was our next item, discussion of proposed amendments to.
right, we're still going to want to do that.
I think we want to do that.
We're going to do that tonight.
Okay.
I think it starts the ball rolling.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's going
All
to
right.
get us going.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Cassie. Do we want them to stay for this?
Corey is sticking
Yeah,
around.
Corey, sure.
Corey's sticking around, I know, for a later item too.
Cassie, go get us some eggnog, okay? Hey, well, as much as I would like to have something done, I'd like that at least we got the calendar moving forward. I was in diapers when this process started, and I don't want to be in diapers when it ends, so. So
We better hurry then.
Thanks. Okay, item 6, discussion of proposed amendments to SMSC overlay zone. Corey, are you going to talk about this?
Yes, this is a result of a recent direction from the council. So yes, this involves the overlay, but it is a very narrow and targeted set of amendments that we discussed recently. Two items that are associated of targeting the ordinance. The first one deals with the setbacks. Setbacks in the different lot types have different ranges. We've broadened them a little bit. They used to be really close, and we went to 10 feet and 15 feet on a few of the lot types. But the discussion about the fire district's site and its setbacks, its apron, its setbacks, it is being set back further than the range. So a portion of the building where the office is, it's actually, I think, the training room, is at the setback. But there's a substantial portion of the building that's not at the setback. It is deeper. It is actually, I think, just about 50 feet, where the setback stops at 20. You can go deeper if you do X, Y, and Z in the design of the ordinance. The courtyard, the plaza, the gathering spaces, things of that nature. I think the ordinance says, it references two terms, plaza and courtyard. If you provide that, you can get an increased setback allowance. That's been a cause of concern. And so the direction for the council, from the council is to go and take a look at that situation and what would you recommend? And so we're not talking tonight about the actual outcome because we still have to run it through the Planning Commission, but I'm talking about setting the direction, the narrow direction. Planning Commission, go look at this. What I'm proposing in the draft is to leave the exception in, not the exception, the language to be in place for all of the lot types excepting the civic use lot type. Because each one of them have different sets of setbacks. And so just trying to create a standard is not workable, because then we're going to try to uniform all of those lot types. And that has a fundamental outcome that we're going to talk about, further. So to narrow that to the civic lot type, that the civic lot type can have an increased range so that the plaza and the courtyard can fall off of the design requirement. And so the proposal is to ask the Planning Commission to look to see if the range can go from 30 feet to 50 feet. I think right now it's like 15 feet to 25 feet for the civic lot type. Reasoning behind my suggesting that range is the civic lot type is where you generally see like City Hall. We have a pretty deep setback at City Hall. You see more green space around City Hall in the civic lot. You're not going to see the 50-foot entrances to buildings in civic uses. That's not really a civic use lot type. And so adjusting that doesn't seem threatening, for lack of better terms, the fundamental basis of the overlay. For me, just real quick for a tangent, is allowing the civic use lot should have been narrowed to begin with. But we're already there, so we're past that. We're putting a civic lot type over where the fire station is. Increasing that setbacks for civic uses is not out of character for civic type of uses. Now you just have to decide what that range is. For the fire department, the 50-foot is needed to eliminate the setback further, do X, Y, and Z. So it would essentially eliminate the courtyard plaza area for the increased setback. And that's that's very narrow. Planning Commission, is it okay to do this broader range for a civic lot type? The second parameter is the spacing between different lots. As you go down the road, you're going to have spacing between buildings, because we don't have a requirement that says the entire building has to fit the entire width of the lot. I think we go up to like 80% of the lot. So you'll have spaces landing in, depending on where the next lot puts their building, depends on what kind of that spacing occurs. And if each one uses their spacing on the same side of the lot, the second standard is trying to say, oh, if you couple your spacing together, you have a greater distance in the fabric. So we want to do something when that greater distance is. So greater than 15 feet is what it's saying. If it's greater than 15 feet, which you can have greater than 15 feet, but you have to now do this design. You have to fill it in with something. And I used the example, I think, earlier of Park City. If you walk up to Park City on Main Street, you'll see the vacant lot areas. And particularly it shows up vacant where they have those nice old ski steps going up to the top of the main street. You'll see a little courtyard and gathering spaces often right by those little steps. And those gathering spaces fill in the differences between the building. The concept is okay, we don't have a building there, but we still have some type of design feature. And particularly that design feature is usually oriented to a pedestrian environment. And so you put that design feature in. The Second Amendment is not being targeted specific, because it's a broad standard across all lot types. It's saying whenever you have this extra space beyond 15 feet, we want you to fill it with something to create the form across the streetscape. But it only said a courtyard or a gathering area or something like that, and I'm trying to put a comma and a whole bunch of other elements. So I'm trying to introduce without targeting and saying everybody's eliminated from that need to fill in the gap. I'm saying let's broaden the elements that qualify as the fill into the gap. And so the example that's been brought to you is the fire department. Currently, they have their courtyard and plaza for the increased setback. They also have an extension of that apron for the gap. It's a small extension. Then they put in a future sign that could be a historic, marker place. And the discussion is well, maybe the historic marker is not the right location. It's associated with the apron. You don't want people hanging out. So I think we can replace it with something in between. And I try to call out some examples. People like to use the trees and the landscaping. Not all cases, the trees and landscaping. If you think in the fire district, they don't want a big old sycamore right out on the corner of their apron. But you could do, but to have just grass there doesn't create that visual interest. So I'm saying non-turf element. Landscaping beds, landscaping walls, you know, the short wall over at a In-N-Out Burger that fronts all of that massive parking lot. It disappears to the eye with a short little landscape wall and some plantings in between. So I'm saying that kind of feature can fill that gap. In the case of the fire department, I've talked to the architect. If it would take away the need to extend the apron in this case, and it would then they would have to create that feature, and that feature could be simplistic. If it's not a historic monument sign, it could be, Hogan does a very good job. They did it at the Syracuse Police where they inlaid the shape of the badge for the police department into the concrete. And you could do that with the South Main Street District. It could be a site identification sign for the fire department, and a nice little bottom base, emblazon the symbol on there, put in a landscaping bed. There's your landscape feature. It fills that need. And the reason I give you specifics so you can envision it, but I was uncomfortable just saying axe the fill-in. Because for the fire department, it benefits them, but for the design requirement that's supposed to be across all fabrics, it leads itself to problematic. So I would just suggest that you ask the planning commission, give them the opportunity to say, is it okay to expand the qualifying features that somebody could use? And I still think it meets the intent and spirit. You know, instead of just forcing a gathering area, you can force, you know, other design elements to fill in that gap that can work with their landscaping. So those are the two targets. It's limited in nature. I tried to be limited in nature because it's always the issue of the unintended consequences. And but you can certainly narrow further than I've suggested. But there's a brief design explanation of the way I crafted it and the reasoning behind it.
Good job. I like it.
So can I ask probably the wrong place to ask the question, but I'm going to ask it.
You can always ask questions. I can always give a really silly
So down
answer.
at State in Salt Lake, State Street and 13th South.
Okay.
You've got the,
Wayne's World,
pardon?
Wayne's World gas station.
Maybe it's the wrong
Great
corner.
intersection. I drive it every day.
The company that sells longevity pins and logos and stuff.
Symbol Arts.
No.
Bill, could you
O'Brien-
talk into your mic more?
O.C. Tanner?
O.C. Tanner. O.C. Tanner, thank you. Beg your pardon.
It's 21st.
They've got those
21st
big
South.
gardens.
It's 21st.
Is that 21st?
21st South.
They've got that great big rose garden and fountains and all that stuff. Is that why those are there? Because they were too far back in their setback on the building when they put that in and modified it? So I've always thought, gee, what nice guys.
I don't know if Salt Lake does that, knowing O.C. Tanner and where their home is. If you've seen where the Heritage Home is and all the landscaping around it, I have a sneaky suspicion that that's O.C. Tanner's taste.
Okay.
They are just really nice guys.
I don't know about that, but okay.
But maybe Salt Lake ordinance is required, but I also know the Tanners and I have Jenny's uncle lives up next to them, and I've been by their place, and I would just venture to guess that that's the taste of the
Okay.
Tanners.
Just curious.
It does look nice, though.
I actually like your thoughts. I think it's great. So. And we can go a few steps further in our meeting on the second.
For other elements, yes. This is solving two specific matters that have been difficult.
So this is our, I just want to be painfully clear, this is our test case to see how long it takes to get something back from the planning commission with express direction, right?
Sure.
So we can use this as the measurement for the rest of the overlay.
Yeah, the issue that you have to decide is, it is very targeted, so it should be a simplistic discussion. But you could also, I know that the difficulties of how people perceive things, but the perception of things versus what you can do, and then softly send that message, is you can say up or down. Don't take a lot of time. Do you like these changes or not like these changes? And let us know one way or another, rather than reinventing.
So we
other
can
expanded
request an
elements.
answer for the night that they look at it. And then we can also,
Now, I think we could probably get it through fairly quickly, but I have to reserve the right that they might open up a door to something else, and it certainly would be difficult for staff to tell them they can't without some type of
something
confidence.
from, so, and could we also notice this for the city council and the planning commission at the same time? So that would also cut the time.
Yes, you can ask staff to do that, and we get Steve and McKinsey to, we'll be targeting the date it goes out to the planning commission so that we can double target it for the date it receives at the council.
Awesome. That feels like progress. It really
Yeah.
does.
Because I actually figured out what we're doing.
Well, and I like the qualifier that this is very simple and directed, and that other will be more broad in scope. But I think in being reactive to the comments that have been made about the length of time, if we can sort of bracket this based on the response from this, that might help. I mean, we have property owners who are here trying to determine that. So if we can tell them, yeah, this is what the turnaround looks like, that'll be helpful.
So do you need a?
Yeah, it's
Do
the
you need a
issue of the
motion,
council
or-
making a motion to take these two directives to the planning commission, put it through the process, and expedite the noticing associated with it.
So moved.
Second.
Did everybody hear the motion?
Mhm.
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Did you get that motion down?
Did you get the motion, Katie? Sure. Okay.
Thanks, Corey. All right, Mayor's report. I find it interesting that when I go to a committee meeting, I get to report on it. When you guys have your committee meetings, we only let you report every now and then, so maybe we should.
You're just more important than us. You go to the more important committees.
I don't know. I don't think so. I'd like to trade you some, so.
I could tell you about the landscape specific plants in different places of the Whitaker if you wanted to hear about it.
We had a tree committee meeting this week if you'd like, or last week if you'd like.
I might
You open it up, they take a mile.
give you a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes to report on that tree committee meeting then. UIA, relatively quiet at this point in time. It was a short meeting. We approved the audit report. Kurt Sudwick's is retiring. I may have mentioned that before. I don't know if you have any interest. I received the email recently that they're doing their roadshow again, of them coming and presenting a meeting again.
I already made the request, Mayor.
Have you?
Based on the council's direction.
Okay.
And we're bringing them.
Great.
Well, I'm waiting for their response, but it's in February is what we've requested.
So that's super. So, and then usually the UIA meeting is 8:30 in the morning, and Utopia follows up right after. And so Steve has included those audit reports for both UIA and Utopia. He got the UIA from me and the Utopia from George. Do you want to say anything, George, on Utopia?
I did not attend the meeting, so I had to read the minutes from that. The one thing that I do call out is just be very circumspect with the story that's told about the success of Utopia. Balance sheets don't lie, so look at the net position. It continues to be negative and increasing in value in a negative direction. I know that they've got some pretty good efforts going forward in Lehigh and some other cities that are not part of the Utopia network that they're trying to get to invest in the network for the infrastructure build out. I still share the same concerns I always have. I'd like to see the balance sheet of Utopia improve as UIA improves, but right now it's still a stranded vehicle. So, but the same concerns. I'd like to see that turn around.
What is the, do you have a feeling, either of you, from having attended those meetings, what the prognosis is of getting other people on the bandwagon?
Well, the Laytons, you know, they bonded for Layton to beef up their system there. I mean, we're not on the hook for those bonds. I mean, Layton's on the hook to replay those bonds. But, so that's huge, because I'd have to look back to see how many users that will allow to come on there. That's UIA's big thing right now, is look at our takedown rate. Look how many people we have coming on board. Of course, I've cautioned them about, yeah, be excited about growth, but you got to be able to control that growth as well, too. And as George said, I mean, financial statements, revenue-wise, look great, but there's still some weaknesses in the rest of their financials. But so Layton's a big one, and yeah, that's the biggest one. I mean, others are coming along as well too. We haven't bonded for it in anything else where any other city is.
Well, there's no way we get pulled into any other bonds, right?
No.
No. But when you mention a Lehigh, I mean, a currently uninvolved city, is that a realistic hope?
So it falls under their same model that they've proposed out in Syracuse and otherwise, which is if you can come up with the money for this, we'll go ahead and effectively administer your network. We'll manage. We'll be your general contractor. We'll manage the build out, and we can connect you to the network. They've got a few different proposals out there with what is the threshold that will keep your city from incurring sales tax pledges or franchise, whichever model they're working under. The number is still 30% sign up, gets you a get out of jail free card or get out of debt free card, as you will be able to bootstrap yourself without actually incurring the backstops. It's fair to say the value proposition continues to go up. That's not any dispute. The problem is that the use cases for higher speed internet don't go up any further. So you get most people who say, I can watch Netflix on my phone, I can do this, that, and the other. So like one of the new service offerings is you can get 10 gigabit service to a home on the fiber network. I can tell you from a technologist standpoint, there's absolutely no point in having a 10 gig pipe to a home. That's talking like state of Utah, government building to government building level communications. No private subscriber can consume it, and they'll also hit a data cap. So whereas you can say high-speed internet and everyone can get the picture and say, yeah, I'm willing to do that, when they actually get into their use cases, the speed differential isn't creating that big of a marketplace to go beyond. So the services are available out to 1 gig. Probably the subscriber market will not need to move beyond that anytime soon, unless there's a serious revolution in imaging technology or something else, transporters, VR with holographic displays or something. You're not going to see a use case that makes that palatable to an individual subscriber. So the take rate, I think it's going to continue along this trajectory, but there will be competing technologies. You're looking at in 3 to 5 years, you're going to have 5G wireless deployed in a lot of cities, which meets a lot of the requirements that a fiber line. I'm still holding with my prediction from 2004 when I said you will always be overtaken by wireless technologies before you pay this off. And that
by somebody who works for a large cell phone company, that they actually have the 5G 5G available, and that they will come through cities, and what they will do is install it in every street light, and then you won't need anything else. You'll all get your internet from there.
Absolutely.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's sweet for Utopia.
Bill, would you take just a brief time and tell us about the tree board? Mackenzie filled me in a little bit, but I hadn't talked to you since you had your first meeting.
We had an initial meeting of the tree board. They have elected a chairman and a co-chairman. The next meeting is January 30th. The group is planning to meet monthly to every 6 weeks through the first half of the year, and then probably go to quarterly or semi-annual, with a specific focus on being able to make some suggestions to the city council of how we might be able to improve our efforts on trees and sidewalks, and recommendations to residents, and enforcement with regard to tree provisions. Specifically, we found out that Gary Smith, one of the members, participated in something back in about 2001. And there supposedly was a study and a list provided, which Mackenzie is now searching for. I haven't heard that she has found it at that point in time, which differs significantly from what is included in the current city code about trees recommended. So we're trying to find that, and next meeting's in end of January.
Great, so it sounds like you got a lot done.
Got a lot done. It's a good meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you'd mentioned that, because when I talked with Mackenzie, I thought I want to report on that since you had your initial meeting. The other thing that I've been involved with is we had lunch with the mayor last week. Went really well. We have some wonderful children. They just eat up that experience, especially obviously what the two chiefs talked to them about. They like Steve's presentation. We're going to have to modify his because we won't have the same city manager. And then we have DARE graduations going right now. You probably all know this, but as I talked with Detective Davis, obviously DARE has expanded from more than just alcohol to all dealing with all facets of life for these kids, for bowling, adjusting the life ahead. So it's really evolved, I guess, from where it used to be, that they're not graduating just from resist drugs and alcohol. But I wasn't able to go in the spring. You had gone for me, Councilwoman Meekum, so that's quite the program. And I have one tomorrow at Taylor, and the one last Friday was at Stewart. All the sixth graders and their parents there, and it's a wonderful program, and Detective Davis does a wonderful job with it. The children just loved him, so that was a neat experience. So not much at the fire board. Didn't talk about the new station though. We just talked about their financial statements, purchase of a new truck, and so that's all we had to do with the fire board. So we will move on. Liaison report from Councilwoman Meekum on your Trails Committee and your COG Transportation Committee.
On the Transportation Committee, a lot of it doesn't directly affect us. There's been a lot going up on North, and of course Highway 89. I've still got a lawsuit against it, but they're still trying to go ahead and more or less turn it into a freeway. They've got, so they're still working on that. One of the things that is affecting us is our bus ridership is way down. And one of the reasons that they think it's better electric cars that are getting, saving people on their energy. People are working from home more, and Uber's really hurting the buses, which I hadn't thought about until they talked about that. So now UTA is actually looking at a van that would work more like an Uber, so it would be around and be able to circle in. And so I don't know how many of you know, but the Flex bus the people complained about coming up through Florentine, and they moved over to Porter's Lane. That is just a van. It's not a big bus. And so I think the neighbors were much happier with that.
So like a 15-passenger van or smaller?
No, it was
like
probably,
a shuttle,
yeah, kind of like a shuttle bus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, and here again, it doesn't really affect us, but they're putting in a midtown trolley, which will be have a free fare through the Layton Clearfield area. And they're also trying to make some of these trolleys, especially the ones that don't have a fare, be more like the one, I don't know if you've seen the new one that's up in Farmington now, the Lagoon Shuttle. I mean, it definitely sticks out. It doesn't look like a bus. It looks like a trolley. And so they've ordered them in so that they'll be recognizable, and more people will use them because they'll know what it is, where it's going, and, you know, people in the area will get used to seeing it in a certain.
I thought the lagoon trolley only ran during the summer.
I seen it up there the other day.
I saw it up there the other day, and it was out to Farmington Station.
Yeah, I think it's going, and I don't know if it's just for the Christmas season.
I don't either.
Or not. The other thing that was very well, and then we did the legacy, and we voted on that, and so that was another thing that we talked about, was the legacy will be losing its
Status or
yeah,
byway.
its
Designation.
they
Scenic
call-
byway.
Yeah, well, they're hoping it will stay the scenic byway, and there is a scenic byway committee that's fighting for it strongly, that the speed limit will probably definitely go up, but that will not make it not be a scenic byway. But if we let the trucks and things be on it, we could more easily lose it as a scenic byway. If we lose the scenic byway status, then we'll end up, they'll be able to put billboards and things on it. So they're fighting really hard for that. The other thing that was really interesting was this inland port that they're trying to bring into Salt Lake. The amount of, well, right now there's a lawsuit against it.
Okay, that's true.
So they seemed iffy, as if they, you know, and so the amount of trucks that's going to put on our roads. And one of the reasons we think they're trying to get it on Legacy is it could become a truck route. There's even talks about, well, should we put the trucks all on there? Should we? So, I mean, the truck traffic, if that inland port goes in, will just be, it will affect everybody every day. So they are also trying to, where the inland port will come, then they're trying to bring in manufacturers that will locate just around the perimeter of the port, because you can get your things, you can get your materials to build cheaper, and then you can ship them back out again. They're looking at Boeing. Boeing could bring in, let's see, I think it was 8,000 jobs if we get the Boeing that we're looking for right now. They figure it would cost 20,000 jobs with the people that would have to take care of the 8,000 plus the 8,000. So you're bringing in that many people. Of course, they're going to want the density in the areas around. The other thing that we've talked about is trying to get government funding and changing the TRAX train into electric. It would go 150 to 200 miles an hour.
Do you mean the front runner?
The front runner, yeah, the front runner. Sorry, the TRAX train. Yeah, it's going to go through Salt Lake at 150 miles an hour. You think those accidents
I'm not walking on Main in Salt Lake anymore.
Wow. And so we would probably
how fast does that go now?
Up to 80.
Yeah, it's past me. It's
Yeah, it passes me when I'm driving.
But the thing about it is it takes forever for it to slow down. And it takes forever for it to, so it probably only goes 70 miles an hour for 4 minutes in between towns, because by the time it gets up, it does 70 miles an hour, and then it's got to slow back down. And the electric ones stop and go, you know, like on a dime type thing is what they're saying. And so then we would probably be able to get a stop if that becomes reality for us. And there'd be a lot more people that would use it, because you would get to where you're going so fast. So it's kind of interesting. I think it's still out there for a while, but those are kind of the things that have affected us that in the last little while. The Trails Committee still talking and looking for the bike trail up on the mountain and waiting for decisions to come from the city staff so that council can look at that again. And then also it's this late, my brain doesn't work anymore. The transportation study that we've got going with the other cities, they're putting a committee together now to give them input.
Thank you. Very good report. I'd learned lots through that. Thank you. Item number 9, City Manager's Report. Steve, you're going to brief us on a lot of calendar items and other things, huh?
Yes. First, though, do we need to have a motion, Lisa, to, what's required to cancel a meeting that a regularly scheduled meeting, do they have to make a motion for that, or?
Yeah, typically they just make a motion.
Now, just for the possibility that there may come a need to have the meeting, could the motion cancel the meeting unless the mayor decides we've got to have one?
What meeting are you talking about?
Talking about
January 2nd, regular meeting that I was talking about a little bit earlier.
We just talked about potentially canceling.
Can we just not,
council meeting.
can we just not leave the regular meeting there, but have an extremely restricted schedule so it takes 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
expand it
So,
if necessary?
Yeah, if,
So let me just throw a motion out then, and we'll just go for this. Let's motion to remove the January 2nd meeting from the published calendar.
well, I think what Steve's saying is some items may come up in the next week. So I think what you could say is motion to cancel the January 2nd meeting unless something comes up that the city manager and mayor thinks we need a meeting. Then we can have a meeting. Unless you really don't want a meeting, then.
We really just want a work session.
Yeah, I just, sometimes you get surprised, but.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a problem with?
No, other than if anyone's planning on attending that from the public, if we say it's not gonna happen, but it might happen. I guess as long as we're noticing.
If she's happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, I
24-hour
mean.
notice, right, if you needed to, so.
Do we have to, if we don't have it, are we supposed to post a notice?
Yes.
Just in the normal places?
Yeah, she posts it and
On
puts
the
it
website and the
on
state website?
It's the
Okay.
same procedure.
Okay.
Just notifying that we've canceled the meeting.
So if you're willing to go with that motion, then that would give us flexibility, but.
Do we have a motion and a second to cancel the city council meeting for January 2nd, 2000?
Was there a second?
Did you second it?
Wait a minute, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Mayor, wasn't the motion unless you and I decide we need to have one?
So let's vote down this one and we'll make a new motion. 'Cause the motion as it stands doesn't include that.
Yeah, I unfortunately cannot make motions.
It seems like to me that we, if anything does come up, could maybe throw it onto the work session, but unless it's a public hearing or something.
I think you
We
can't,
can't make decisions
technically you
at a
can't make
work session.
decisions to the
Oh,
work
that's
session.
true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to call a vote?
So we have a motion to cancel the
Nay.
January 2nd, 2019 council meeting. I can't make motions either, can I? Nope. And I'm changing it, so.
So the suggestion is we just go ahead and call the question, vote it down, and then we can have a new motion.
Okay. Motion and the second, all in favor?
Nay.
Okay. So, new motion?
So I would make a motion that we tentatively cancel the January 2nd meeting unless the mayor and city manager decide such meeting is necessary.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay, but right now I don't expect one, okay? All right. So I've had Corey stay for this first item under city manager's report, which is the building inspection services. And due to the lateness of the hour, I'll try to be very brief and review the history here and make a suggestion or a recommendation to you. In my 21 years here, we have switched back and forth between contract and in-house inspector. When I got here 21 years ago, we had an in-house inspector. Just within a few years, we went to a contract approach because we had trouble holding on to in-house inspectors. They were being hired away by other bigger cities. So we went with a firm and had contract services for a period of time. Then we switched from that firm to Sunrise. And during the time that we had Sunrise services, which that began in about 2002 or 3, one of their inspectors, our workload was building up, and we had one of their inspectors who was interested in being a full-time inspector for the city, coming in-house. And so we hired that person in-house and continued with a contract with Sunrise to supplement the services of the in-house inspector. And there are several amendments to that contract with Sunrise to extend those services. The last amendment was in 2007 for a 2-year extension, and that was during the time frame we had the in-house inspector. The in-house inspector resigned in 2009, about the time the the Sunrise contract lapsed. We asked Sunrise at that point that we wanted to continue with Sunrise at that point. That last amendment with Sunrise in 2007, which was for a 2-year extension, had in it annual increases of 4%, 2 of those within that 2-year period that they could request and the city could consider. It would be a decision of the city. They did not request those increases, so in other words, the fees that were agreed upon in 2007 have been the fees that have been in place ever since then, the hourly rates. But after the lapse in 2009, Corey and I talked about whether to initiate a renewal of the contract. We felt like, at least at that point, that we would wait till we would continue an open-ended arrangement until they requested an increase, and then we would bring that matter to the city council for whether you wanted to renew contract with them under their proposed rates or not. And quite frankly, that has been the condition ever since. I haven't thought of a lot about it since then. I think the city has gotten good value. I do believe that we should now get a contract in place, whether it's with Sunrise or go through an RFP process. But I would suggest this. I would like to ask that you allow the next month for Corey and I to gain what we can from the other South Davis cities about the services, the buildings inspection services they are using, what their experience has been, what they're paying for those, if they're contract services, whether they've been happy with them, and come back to you with a report of that information as a basis for you deciding whether we ought to go out with an RFP, or does it make sense that we just entertain a new contract with Sunrise. The purchasing policy does not require you to obtain bids for professional services. It does allow you to directly engage and enter into an agreement for professional services. So I guess what I'm saying is, if the information we gather shows that it makes sense for us to continue with Sunrise, then let's see if we can negotiate an acceptable deal with Sunrise to do so.
I would also be curious, as you're putting out feelers and getting feedback, to have reported back to us those cities who have an in-house and what their feelings are, and if they feel like they're getting a good cost benefit and
You mean because we may want to consider that? Is that what you're saying? Because
I would just want that information. I mean, I know recently Farmington went from contract to in-house, and it's recent, so they don't have a lot of experience with it, but they're very excited.
But you look at the amount of building that
Yeah,
Farmington has and the amount
Yeah.
that we have, and if you were to hire somebody now, we're gonna get less and less building in the next 5 years. That wouldn't be a job I would want to take, because obviously you wouldn't have much job security.
I just feel very strongly that the way for us to continue to go is contract.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm convinced it's for the foreseeable future, and Corey, wouldn't you agree, that's going to be the most
I
economical
like Tammy, I wish we could have our
way to
own.
go.
I think it would be better for our citizens that are working, that have somebody to come whenever, but I don't think it would be plausible. I don't think we're doing enough.
Well, what you want with your contract arrangement is to have a service from a firm that can provide a backup when your primary inspector can't come. And that's what we have been getting that with Sunrise. So if you're supportive of that, I'd like to have that period of time to gather that information and bring that back to you, and then you can decide what you want to do.
I think it would be interesting also in your information gathering there is to find out those who are on contract, what is the length of contract term they're using? If it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
18 years.
18 years, whatever that term is, so we have a good understanding of that.
That's a good idea.
I agree.
I don't mind having stability, I just like to have a contract term that isn't open-ended.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on in-house, just so you have a perspective of why contract is at least first considered. When you have a building inspector, you're going to pay their salary plus benefits. But their salary plus benefits, particularly their salary, is going to be based on how many certifications they have. And if they're going to function as building official, they have to have all certifications. So now you're looking at a premium person. The problem with a premium person isn't that they can't do quality work and we can control that. The question is when you have vacation time, sick time built into that, somebody needs to provide under the state law reasonable time service. Right now we commit to, you call within 24 hours after your call, you'll have a scheduled inspection. I think the state tried to put it in a 3-day, and then it was lobbied against that and said reasonable about a time. But most of the time we're trying to keep those services at a 24-hour rate. We don't always do perfect on that, and it's at their request, because if they're, a lot of them try to call in early to schedule something, but they're not really ready for the inspection, and so we run into that problem. But you know, if you think about that premium of certifications, the need for a backup, most of the time when you're small cities, if you go in-house, they're willing to pay the premium to get the individual there for, like the talks about somebody is there every day or whatever the issue is, but they will continue a contract on top of that that's associated with picking up the leftovers that are needed. The other thing to be aware of in the contract, the amount of people getting an education to be inspectors is really low. So you don't have a big broad pool out there. So if you're asking for the premium, you can tell what the premium pay is going to be to get that premium to that location, you know, to come to your location. And the other aspect is county went out a year ago that I know of for a bid process. They had some controversy on what their contract cost was given the Chevron expansion. So they terminated that contract, rebid out the contract to handle that. They had 5, 2 of them were from California. So you're seeing a low level of professional services out there capable of providing your building inspections. And they ended up going back with the individual they previously had the contract with, which was interesting. But the county doesn't do a lot of single-family home and that kind of work. There's not a lot of demand in that because the cities are doing that. They have some of the outlying county areas, and Chevron inspections is huge. And that's their premium, is the person that has the qualifications to inspect the Chevron construction. So you'll have a low turnout in firms likely. There'll be a competing interest into that, but I still think right now the contract's the way to go, because unless you're willing to pay that premium for that service, we can cover that through contract costs, and then we can cover the overhead and other hard costs that are involved with city staff. Right now, we're running just about 50% of our revenue for the contract cost. The other 50% of the revenue is covering all of the several staff that touch it and the other overhead costs with that. The other thing you should be aware about, right now we've adopted the 1999 fee schedule valuation. There is a 2015 valuation. There are cities that have gone to a much higher rate. So we can cover increase in contract costs, and we could look at the premium amount associated with an employee, but you're going to look at taking your 1999 valuation and moving that up to a more modern day valuation. So our actual permit costs are relatively on the conservative side when people pull a building permit right now.
So in summary, we haven't had a contract since 2009. We haven't had increases, however, in the fees since 2007. So I think the value we've gotten is good. I do agree, though, that we ought to get a contract in place. But let us bring you back a report of the situation out there that might help you decide whether you want to go out for an RFP or simply try to negotiate something acceptable. And I would like to ask for, Corey, can either the January 15 or the first meeting in February, is that reasonable, council, if we get back to you by one of those dates? Okay.
I would think so.
All right. Is that doable, Corey? Okay. The Complete Streets Committee, I put in the packet that information. Considering the hour, I don't want to spend more time on this than you want to spend on it. You haven't received a written report from me. If you've read the policy, you haven't received a written report from me every 2 years since that policy was adopted in 2015. I perceived that that was not a priority for you with the new council after that October 2015 council meeting. But we have, as staff, tried to follow the spirit of that policy. We brought the Complete Streets Committee together to review the frontage road project, for example, the bike lanes there. We brought the Complete Streets Committee together today in yesterday in an expanded group, greatly expanded group, to talk about the Main Street striping. And there was a consensus that came out of that will come before you on January 15. And we'll post the meeting for public comment on that. I'm kind of leaving it in your lap. If you want to us to get to more completely comply with that Complete Streets policy, please bring it up and let us know. But we are trying to at least implement the spirit of that.
I would say just having it in place and the efforts to implement the spirit of it have borne positive fruits.
And you have two of your council members on the Complete Streets Committee, Councilwoman Meekum and Councilman Fillmore.
Well, they're not on the basic committee.
We're not officially in the committee.
Yeah, sorry, they're on, but are on the.
And that's what I would also say is that in that last expanded sized meeting and group, I think things were caught that wouldn't have been caught otherwise. I think that for the future, it's important to recognize that staff's perspective is invaluable, but also having the user perspective is important. And
we had a Trails Committee representative there yesterday. We had Alta Planning rep there. We had Tammy there. Bruce Cox was there because he's working with Alta on the active transportation plan. We had the police chief there.
It was a good meeting.
Yeah, I felt good about the outcome.
They already said that because your outline says Complete Streets Committee augmented with several other persons.
Right.
You guys were the augmentations.
That's right. That's right.
Be involved in reckoning how Main Street is repaved. So.
Right. Okay, then C, very quickly, Parish Lane is also a project next year. It's going to be a separate project from the Main Street project, but they're both UDOT projects. Both of them are milling the asphalt down a couple inches and then repaving.
Is that the full length of Main Street?
Yes, all the way. In fact, it's from.
And the full length of Parish?
In fact, well, it's Main Street from 400 North in Bountiful up to Lund Lane. And then Parish is from Main to, I think, what did they say, 1250 West? Okay. Thereabouts.
So it won't impact the crosswalk there at?
No, because that's not state road.
Okay.
The state road ends at Main Street.
At Main Street.
Yeah.
If it's at all possible during that period, it'd be really great to see what the stats are as far as the frontage road usage during that milling project on Main Street. I want to see where the traffic goes, because we're talking about needing to do double lefts, and there's some assumptions we're making about Main Street. We've said this for a while. Main is a through street to get to Farmington. Is that true? What's the traffic distribution going to look like? I don't know if there's any way to get them to do some analysis while that project's underway, but I'd love to see prior, during, and after what the implementation looks like.
That would be fun.
Would you make a note of that, Jake, and give that to me tomorrow so I don't have to pause to make that note?
I think more than anything, Steve, that will dispel any anecdotal notions about what it is. That'll actually give us some real numbers to work from.
Okay, and then finally we talked about the work session, moving that to the 2nd of January. So I think we're on that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Steve, on that repaving, the state's aware of
July 4th
parade?
Yes.
We're going to be moving it to 400 West.
We brought that up specifically
that's the number one
yesterday.
date to avoid.
Okay.
Yep.
And thanks for that report. I know of at least one other city. I talked to Mayor in West Bountiful that just does their services, building inspection, contracted out, and they're not a contract either, so.
Their contract lapsed as well.
Yes, correct. Okay, unless I hear otherwise, I'm not aware of a closed meeting need. And then number 11, I do have one appointment to a board, Grant Chavez?
Grant Chavez.
Yeah, he was unable to.
Grant or Pat?
Huh? He was unable to serve on the tree board. He accepted, and then he found that he couldn't. So I have asked Jennifer Beckstrand, and she has accepted to serve on the tree board to fill his spot. So I need a motion on that.
I'll motion that we put Jennifer Beckstrand in on our tree board.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. I would just close with saying Merry Christmas to all of you. I hope it's a safe and happy one, and that y'all enjoy this season. And I'm grateful for the opportunity I have to serve with you. So thank you. It's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Council's adjourned.